say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and D-gentlemen of all ages. We are back with another book club. Can't believe it. We're already on episode number 6. Tonight we are covering The Millionaire Next Door. This is going to be what I think is a bit of a more of a review of the book for this episode. We all had a chance to look at it, and I will say this. It was published in 1996. You may notice a thing or two has changed since then, so we might be disagreeing with this book a little more than in the past. However, at the same time, I do think there are still some like nuggets of information that ring true and honestly match up pretty well with some of the other books that we've covered in the past. Anyways, we're going to get to it. I am Zenith, your host for this evening, and I am joined by my co-host, Will. How we doing, man?
Aloha, amigos. I'm just ready to rock and roll, man. It is very interesting, like reading this book and just thinking, like, oh, that doesn't apply. Oh, that doesn't apply. Oh, that doesn't apply. It was quite a good time. But I'm just chilling over here in like central northern Texas for the time being. I will probably roll down to Temple tomorrow to hang out with a good radio station friend of mine. So I'll drop a link in the chat in the Telegram group when we go live, or well, if I end up doing the radio program. But that's what's going on with me. How are we going to do this round robin? I'll pass it back to you, Zenith.
I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to go back to you because you get to introduce our first member of the panel tonight. Who is this newcomer?
All right. Well, this newcomer is a pretty cool brother of mine. His name is Sam Stevenson. Sam, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Stevenson. As you just heard, I am the brother of Will Stevenson. We have the same last name. I am the owner of Bungalows for Bachelors. I am a construction geek, if you want to call it that. A little bit of an engineer, a little bit of a framer. So if you want to take a little trip down learning lane and learn about home construction, if you want to like get into real estate, you realize you don't know anything about houses, anything like that, you want to build stuff, you name it, check out Bungalows for Bachelors. You could just Google it. I got a YouTube channel, tons of free stuff there, or you can check out my school server, www.school.com/BFB success. If you go there, you can learn a bunch of stuff. I got some cool courses, but that's kind of what I do. I'm a geek. I like to build stuff.
Would you be so kind as to drop a link in the private chat, and I will put it up in the YouTube comments while the folks are watching. I think I'm the links man as of late.
You are a living link, my friend.
But sorry, Sam, I cut you off there. But who was that?
Good. I was going to say, Sam, Thank you so much for joining us. It's awesome to start expanding the book club crew, and I hope that this is a good one for you to jump in on. Any initial, just quick hot takes on the book before we pass it off to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say anything, y'all are talking about how all that stuff doesn't apply, and I got to be honest, when I was reading through the book, that's not what I was thinking. I was like, well, yeah, this lines up with all this. Like, it's all the same principles that applied to me. And in fact, something about this book that stood out to me was that how much they focused on the not spending your money part. Because I mean, a lot of the other wealth books that I've read are talked about like how you can sort of amass the wealth in different ways, how you generate the wealth. Like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad talks about like getting opportunities to use your money to like make more money and stuff like that. But I didn't notice a lot of people talking about the frugality part as much. And it really just reminded me to like chill, and just like, if I don't need it, don't get it kind of a thing,
Fair enough. Well, looking forward to some lively discussion tonight then. Should be a good time. All right, on to the rest of the panel. We got the classic Nate, the Ascending Man on the YouTubes. Mick Get It. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I hope Sam is not too uncomfortable as I'm going to be staring at him all night.
Yeah, the camera angles are a little interesting tonight.
Right?
I'm using one of my other monitors to present some of the content. So I'm going to be staring off screen, and you can stare at Sam, and then hopefully Will also figure out a way to get like going that way.
I love it. All right. Yeah, no,
Perfect.
I was reading up on the book too, you know, and well, by the way, it's freezing cold out here right now. Freaking what was it? It was 4 degrees all day for me outside working. Fun times, but hey, it's the weekend now, right? So good times coming. Yeah, I was reading into the book, and again, a lot like how Will was saying, I'm kind of like that doesn't really apply anymore. There is a little bit too much stagnation in how to make money, uh, in my opinion, on what they were talking about. There's a lot more like frugality and saving rather than making your money work for you and actually going out and doing something with it. I find that nowadays, at least, money tends to be more liquid, in which you need it to continue to flow. And the second you have it stop in a savings account of any kind, you're just losing value on it to the point where you're not really going to be able to do too much with it. So that's kind of that's kind of where I went with it. And so, yeah, I think a few things might be a little outdated, but we can definitely talk about that later. Maybe have a little talk
Oh,
about.
we'll be talking about it, all right, for
Heck
sure.
yeah. Heck yeah.
And finally, we have our last but not least member of the panel, Mrs. Producer McGettit. How you doing tonight?
Hello. I'm doing better. My voice seems to be just about back to normal, so that's been nice. When I was going through this book, I actually have to say I think I'm probably more on Sam's side. I saw a lot of elements that I think are still very valid in our day and age. Yeah, there were definitely a few things that was like, no, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But there was still a lot of value, I think, personally. So I'm really interested to see how this conversation goes because we got a lot of conflicting views here.
Definitely. I'll say, I know as far as all the book recommendations I've ever gotten, this still absolutely falls into sort of that like foundational tier of personal finance books. So how we might not even be talking as much as how we can apply this knowledge to crypto today, but more of trying to figure out if we can determine if the knowledge is still relevant and specifically like which parts are and how we can keep going harder on those. All right. With that said, I am going to start sharing some visual aids. We're upgrading the presentation tonight. I'm trying my best. Excellent. Welcome to the Millionaire Next Door PowerPoint edition by yours truly. Effectively is just a good way to get everything on screen and get it going. All right. As always, I'm going to run through a little bit of a summary of the book, and then we're going to start covering some of the main topics that we want to talk about with everybody here tonight. So, first off, what is in the book? Real quick, like I mentioned previously, the book was published in 1996. What this book is actually the findings of the author who conducted a study in the late 80s, early 90s, where they tried to interview as many millionaires as they could. The idea of a millionaire in context of this book is anyone with a net worth of $1 million or more. A lot of the people that they found for the study are actually multimillionaires. I think I want to say around the average was like 4 to 5 million. And then just as a quick adjustment for inflation, if we go in 1996 numbers, that means that their threshold of what a millionaire was today would be about $1.942 million, which is one of the depressing stats that we're going to cover. I'm going to cover another one later when I talk about taxes. Yeah, my favorite. Lastly, you are going to hear us talk about net worth a lot tonight. The idea of net worth is all of your assets minus your liabilities. Effectively, everything you have that's worth money versus everything that you owe to someone else, like, I don't know, the bank, the government, your neighbor, who knows? So, with that said, there are 8 chapters in the book. First one is who's the average millionaire? What does a typical millionaire look like? Second chapter, they talk about how millionaires are very frugal. In fact, one of the stats that they found is that the average income of one of their millionaires only makes up for about 7% of their total net worth, which basically means their total net worth is more than 10 times what they make in a single year. Next up, we have the chapter Time, Energy, and Money. This is where they talk about how the millionaires are very good at budgeting, planning, and investing, and doing a lot of the research and work themselves. After that, we have the chapter You Aren't What You Drive. This is a very interesting chapter because it is one of the main differentiators between the 2 categories of people that the book likes to talk about, which is the people that save and accumulate wealth very well versus the ones that don't and for some reason make a lot of money but are still living paycheck to paycheck. With that said, let's see, car buying behavior shows the difference between the high earners and the not millionaires. And then also about half of the millionaires that they studied in their time only spent about $29,000 on cars in an entire lifetime. Very interesting. After that, we have one of the two chapters that I really want to focus on tonight, which is the first one is economic outpatient care, or basically what does the psychology of giving money people do to you, specifically your own children. It talks about how there's a weird paradigm between a mentality shift, whereas you might think that some of your most successful children don't need assistance. However, the studies show that oftentimes those are the ones that actually receive the most gifts from their own parents. And then as a result of that, sometimes bad habits are formed where the children start to rely on the income and even start to think of their parents' wealth as their own when it comes to doing their own finances. Interesting psychological trick that happens. And the next chapter is actually how to avoid that stuff. That's where the chapter title is called Affirmative Action Family Style. They say it's not necessarily a bad thing to give to your children as long as they are disciplined and can generate their own income. And then after that, we have two final chapters to close out the book. The first one is called Find Your Niche. It's talking about what fields do the millionaires typically find themselves in. A lot of it is something that Alex Ramorzi talks about, which is that in order to make more money, you just need to work for wealthier customers effectively. They talk about how you can make a lot of money in these specializations and professions that really target the upper class and the wealthy and what they spend on. Fun fact, though, they spend on their children, healthcare, and education a lot, and also their own education when it comes to like personal finance and investing, as far as like advisors go. And lastly, last chapter is Millionaires versus the Heirs. Talks about how many of the affluent are business owners actually, and a lot of self-employed professionals. There's no magic industry that you can go into to become a millionaire. It turns out a lot of people are millionaires in a lot of professions. There just happen to be some that are a little more populated than the others. All right, with that said, I gotta check out the stream. All right, we still have this up. First one, we're gonna talk about the snapshot of a millionaire. According to this book, written in 1996, a typical millionaire is an older man with children. They are self-employed. That's about 2 out of the 3 American millionaires, 66% of them. A lot of times they actually have what's called a boring business, such as like a rice farmer, pest controllers, coin and stamp dealers, sort of this stuff. Next up, they have a non-employed wife, or their wife is a teacher, and their spouse is also one who helps plan and budget a lot of the personal finances for the family. Next up, having a college degree or an advanced degree. This is just something they found. Keep in mind, this was also in 1996, so these degrees were actually held a little more weight as they were less common back then. Next up, they care and spend for their children's education aggressively. This is one of the big factors that millionaires try to save up for over the long term, and they often started pretty early, as the data shows. Lastly, they work pretty normal work hours, about 45 and 55 hours a week, which is... It is standard. However, it is a bit contrary to the whole self-employed thing, because sometimes people say that you quit your 9 to 5, become your own boss, and that's when you start working 24/7. Next up, the millionaires invest almost 20% of their own income through their own investment decisions. We're not just talking about just blindly throwing it into the S&P 500. They actually spend a considerable amount of time throughout the week researching investment and financing and budgeting, almost as much as they spend working out by the numbers. Next up, 20% of their wealth is in stocks or mutual funds, 20% is in pension plans, and 20% or more is in their business. And then lastly, a lot of them will recommend being an accountant or law as ideal educations. All right, panel, what do we think of our 1996 snapshot? Will, does this sound like the millionaire you think of in your head?
Not at all, bro. So this might have been like, and again, this is just probably indicative of something that was just about 30 years ago. Shit, am I okay? I am live. I'm not muted. All right. But like I when I think of a millionaire today, first off, like I think being a millionaire today is probably a lot less significant than it was back then. You know, like what you said, it was like $1.92 million in today's money. So
yeah, we've almost doubled thanks to inflation.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild to think about. That was only about 27 years ago, 28.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am curious to see like how, because inflation on average is roughly 5% per year. So like you can expect that your money is worth like it can buy half of the same stuff in 10 years. So like it's pretty on par with like what expectation is. But like, what was the question again? Like that's not what a millionaire of today looks
Wait.
like.
When you think of a
Something like
millionaire in
that.
your head, is this what you think about? Because this
No,
is something
not
the
at
book
all.
talks about as well, is that there's kind of like this idea about millionaires in popular culture is you imagine like mansions and Lambos and like crazy pools
Yeah.
in the backyard and stuff. And the book
Yeah, yeah.
really points out that that is actually less than 20% of the millionaires when it comes to their definition of what a millionaire is.
I
They're-
almost
go for
I
it.
was gonna say, I wonder if like this is part of some like cabal programming trying to get all the normies to be like, oh, I too can be a millionaire one day if only I just keep doing my 9 to 5. Like, I don't know. A lot of this book struck me as a bit like programmy, like everything that we consume is programming and hypnosis to like a certain extent. But this book just like struck me as very preachy is not the right word, but just like, hey, don't worry, relax. Like if you just do this normal, like if you do this normal thing, then like you'll be okay. But I mean, they had a lot of great and good advice in there, but it just struck me as very like lots of millionaires are like relatable or something like that. And
Well, Will, here's
maybe
the thing.
that's how it used to be.
I think programmy might actually be something of a word to use here, because
Yeah.
if you think about how it was back in the 80s, 70s, and 60s, right, which is kind of like boomer
I
or
wasn't alive.
50s, boomers and X's, right?
Yeah.
Boomers and Xers. It wasn't until the millennials that things changed, and all of a sudden, millennials are just kind of left behind, and that's also right around the 2000s is where you start
Mhm.
getting the whole Xers being like, oh, millennials are just lazy and shit like that,
Yeah.
right? Well, so there was a difference there, from 1992 to right around like 2002. That whole decade was a transition period from the way finance used to be to the new way of finance. Now, what ended up happening there?
Mhm.
Well, basically, before that, the way that this book talks about was the way you go get yourself a high educated job, you make a lot of money, or you go do something in a factory or something like, say, pest controlling or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then that would give you enough money eventually after 20 years of doing whatever it is you're doing, right? And then investing just a little bit into 20% here, there, and there. And you could actually go into bonds and it would be okay. And then, yeah, eventually, you'd be just set for life. But that
For sure.
doesn't work anymore. And that's why that's why we turned into what we turned into. And ultimately, like as soon as the banks crashed in 2008, the financial crisis, that was quite frankly I would almost call it the the end of the absolute end, the death of the old way of doing money. And that's also when Bitcoin was created. And who created Bitcoin? Millennials.
Mhm.
Well,
It was-
allegedly it's Elon Musk, so.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to wrap Sam into this conversation. Sam, what do you think? When you think of a millionaire in your mind, was this the image that you had previously pictured? Or
I would not say so. I mean, so yes and no, because when I think of like old millionaires, yes. When I think of modern millionaires, like nowadays, I mean, anybody who's played their crypto cards right, it could be them. So I would say a few things. When I see the 45, 55 hours a week or whatever it was working, first of all, I think when they're doing the study and they're studying all these existing millionaires, what they're not looking at is how many hours a week did you work when you were at the beginning of that process, right? So I would say that, I mean, first of all, like the numbers look skewed because you could be grinding a lot harder than that and just like accomplishing way more with your time. And secondly, I don't think our education system is the same. We have different tools now than we did at that time. And so like this whole thing about, go to college, learn, like the focus super hard on this super formal education. It's like, I don't think that's necessarily, it might still be a good way to do some things, but I don't know if it's the best way. And I would say that, I would rather have my kids learning how to use the internet to its maximum capacity. Like, if you get out there and go start doing the stuff and all of these tools that are going to help you, learn how to use them, not necessarily go learn how to memorize like plants and flowers and like parts of the body or, all that stuff. Like if you want to be a doctor, great. But,
I think you
so
have a good
I
point.
think we're in a very different world now.
For sure. I'm going to tie in a point that I think Nate was alluding to a little bit as well. And we're going to draw back to the idea where the first thing it starts off with is that it says in 1996, at the end of their study, the typical millionaire was an older man with children. What does that tell you? Probably someone like 55 and up. So if we do the math, what was like, I don't know, 35 years before 1996?
Fucking
That's
boomers,
about
man.
1960, like prime boomer era.
Yeah.
That's when we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Like, this is still very much feeling the effects of World War II. We're definitely in our production boom. We haven't even hit the full-on 60s yet. And these people are entering the workforce before like all the hippie stuff, before Woodstock. This is still very much that like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like that 1950s aesthetic, like, not like nuclear family, I guess.
I think in
know.
nuclear family kind of.
Yeah, I guess that sort of thing.
They did specify a couple times how it's like stayed with one wife and did not divorce. It's like, okay.
Yeah, not even that.
Yeah,
But the other thing I was going to
funny.
a bit. The other thing I was going to point out is that if you look at the breakdown by the numbers, they said that the snapshot of the millionaire for them had about 20% of their wealth in stocks and mutual funds, and then another 20% in pension plans. That's effectively 40% of their wealth was created and generated by the stock market. And as we've seen based on real-time data over the last like 30, 40 years, the amount of growth that we had from the early 60s to the 90s started to plateau off. Previously, they talked about how you could do better than 10% on average. Now we're even lucky if we get 8% per year. And if you want to go look at the S&P 500, fun fact, we're only a few points away from regaining the all-time high that we had back in the beginning of January of 2022, I want to say. So we've been chopping sideways for 2 full years. I understand that they average it out over 10-year cycles. However, at the same time, it's not what it used to be. So I'll say this. I personally think the numbers in the book have changed a good bit, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So have a calculator ready. But other than that, I think there is some conventional wisdom here that does hold true. All right, I'm going to throw it over to Mrs. Producer. What do you think?
Actually, I was kind of in the realm of, I did think that this would be not exactly what they're describing, but my impression of like a standard millionaire was actually pretty close to this. When I was really young, I was same visionary. Oh, millionaires must have like all the best stuff in the world. But then as time went on, they did like those radio shows, like you could win $1 million, and people would come on there and they're like, "What would you buy if you had $1 million?" And they're naming like a palace, best car in the universe, just a rocket ship, and eventually it just clicked in my mind like that money would be gone very quickly. So,
for sure.
but for me, it also goes in stages because I have like an impression for like a standard millionaire, I would call it, multimillionaire, and then billionaires. So for me, when it starts getting into that like extravagant home with the big pools and super nice cars everywhere, I'm thinking like multimillionaire. That's kind of where my brain goes. So I kind of had that figured out, actually, fairly youngish, I would say.
I can't remember if it was this book or a different one I read that it talked about when it comes to even like the different levels of finance in the United States specifically. Like there's wealthy and then there's like super wealthy. Like one of them is you can like throw an expensive wedding with a live band versus super wealthy is that you can go get a name band to perform at your wedding, that kind of thing. But I will say something you alluded to is that if you pop culture, in my opinion, presents the idea of a millionaire as someone young making a lot of money, and that's what makes them a millionaire. However, if you want to be boring with it, which numbers typically are, you just save for a long time and put it in a decent investment that's stable and still has some growth in it. And then, yeah, sure, by the time you're 55 or 65, chances are it's going to compound because compounding interest really is the name of the game, or it has been for the last 50 years for conventional wisdom. And I think the picture that this snapshot really presents is, in my opinion, the t-shirt and jeans millionaire. It's that older person that lives next door in the suburbs and their kids are off to college and they're just happy that their family is just doing fantastic and killing it. They don't drive anything crazy. They don't live an extravagant lifestyle, but they're just set for anything. Thoughts?
I think you're completely right about that, especially the impression that we get from media. Movies, TV shows, they often, very, very, very often display these millionaires as being young people. They're driving around in the fast, cool cars, and they're just doing stupid things a lot of the times when we see them, But that's a good point. I actually never really considered like the age part of it.
That's really part of it. That's honestly why housing in and of itself is a different conversation about how those prices have gone. But if you think about it, if you did, like, ignoring the massive raise in cost of housing, if you did just buy a house and then just chip away at your 30-year mortgage, eventually you're going to have a 30-year mortgage paid off, and you're going to have what is arguably like a couple $100,000 asset. So yeah, time kind of erases all failures a little bit here, as long as you have a decent plan. All right, I'm going to pull back up the slides, and we're going to go on to point number 2. I think this is the main dichotomy that the book tries to make, is that what we are talking about in our heads as what we envision like on TV or in those radio commercials about like what is the millionaire, that's where you get what the book calls an under-accumulator of wealth, aka a high earner and high spender. These are people that they experience lifestyle inflation, or otherwise called like keeping up with the Joneses. The idea is like you got a better job, therefore you need to drive a nicer car to impress the partner, so you'll get promoted again, so that you can repeat the whole cycle over and over. But at the end of the day, you're spending just as much as you're making, so you're still living paycheck to paycheck. As a result, you invest a little, and the budgeting skills is showing that it's lacking a little bit. Contrary to this, we have what's called the PAWs, or the prodigious accumulators of wealth. That's a $2 word. These are folks that have various levels of income. However, the one thing that they all do is they live within their means. They don't upsize their lifestyle over time, and they regularly save and invest, and they're very aware of their own budgeting and finances. So back to the panel. In your guys' opinion, which of these categories sound like the average American?
Oh man.
It's definitely going to be high earner, high spender. There's way too many people, especially like managers. They're up there in the 6 figures, and then what are they doing? See, here's the crazy thing too. They're not even buying like crazy stuff, like Ferraris or anything. I service these people all day long, every single day. They got large houses that with lots of fancy things like hot tubs and these like barbecue things like put in stone and all that, and they really don't use them too often. They really don't.
Oh, it's like a symbol thing.
Yeah, yep, it's a symbol keeping up with the Joneses, and because they're put in these neighborhoods where everyone's right next to each other, everyone can see each other. And there's other things too, like on the lake, on a very large hill with a great view or whatever, on a golf course. That's another one.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff like that.
Fair enough. I think the thing that I'm focusing on is that, like we talked about previously, some of the numbers have changed. I think that, unfortunately, a lot of Americans might be falling into the high earner, high spender category. Honestly, not even by choice or by decision making, just as a matter of fact of like some of the things, especially if you follow conventional wisdom in this book, aka go to college, even if you have to go into debt for it, that means that your expenses are automatically going to be a lot higher, which increases that spending. Unfortunately, as something we've talked about with a lot of these book clubs, is that financial literacy is something that the American public, in my personal opinion, is lacking. It's just not something that's taught in schools. It's not wisdom that's like passed down very easily, or well, for that matter. So that's why I think the average person kind of ends up in the UAW, the underaccumulator standpoint. However, there are those people that are willing to make sacrifices and be the accumulators of wealth. And I think those are some of the folks that you see getting ahead, even at a young age, because they understand that you can earn a lot of money, but you got to save some of it. Like immediately comes to mind is like Gronkowski used to play for the Patriots. The story was like the guy literally was like a professional football player, signed with the Patriots, but he still lived with his parents, I think, and like wore jeans and drove a Honda Accord or some nonsense. It's that kind of stuff. It's understanding the game, not being that young hotshot rookie and then spending all your money at the club.
You are absolutely correct too, because here's the thing that people are way too. Oh no, I'm having a brain fart over here. I just lost what it was that you said there.
Talking about Gronkowski and wearing jeans and a t-shirt.
No, it was slightly before that.
Okay. Well, that's what he was talking about.
Before that, I was talking about how like cost of living stuff, like college debt, living in a city.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, so if you're looking at how things are nowadays, it's like how much does it take or does it cost to get a college degree to actually have one of these 6-figure incomes? Well, it's gonna cost you what, like maybe 200, maybe 300. Okay, so let's go ahead and pretend just on easy numbers, right? That's going to be 2 or 3 years of your life entirely of a paycheck without living with any expenses.
Yep.
3 years of your life alone just to pay that back. Like that alone, if you think about it that way, how much can you actually put in? Like with the way that I'm living, I have a third of my expenses, even with a family, going straight into investments of everything that I have. So maybe that could work, but that's still pretty hard to do.
Oh, for sure. It definitely feels good when you can do it, though. I'm going to go to Mrs. McGettit, and Sam, you're going to have the last word on this one. Sound good? I think our boy might be frozen.
Am I
All right,
frozen?
we'll wait for your video is. Your audio is fine. All right, Mrs. McGettit, what do you think between these two archetypes?
I think, hang on one second, I'm trying to look at it here. Okay, yeah. It's very, very much the, I mean, I guess it's a mixed bag, but I just definitely feel like I see more of, at least in the, again, in the media.
How about I
we see
tee
more
you
of
up
the
with a
first
better
type.
question? What
Sure.
do you think there are any like traps or pitfalls that people are falling into these days where they want to accumulate wealth, but they find themselves in the underaccumulation category?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's kind of a standard of life. I think it's a big part, though, that's kind of how we've been set up. That's kind of the bag that's been given to us. Oh, it looks like he's disconnecting his camera. Hopefully he gets back here soon. But that's kind of it's kind of what our generation has been left with. Like, we don't get those opportunities anymore. And you see it all the time. People are like, just work harder. And then like people make obviously the memes about it. Like, yeah, I work 3 jobs and they won't give me a mortgage because they don't think I can afford it.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Housing is especially one of those things where it turned into an investment asset, so therefore it appreciated at its own rate. And then it just had the unfortunate side effect that it was also somewhat of a necessity for people to achieve certain things. Like if you wanted to work in a high power law firm, chances are you're either near DC or New York City or something like that. And guess what? Real estate around there is rather expensive. That's just
Oh yeah,
the name of the game.
Yeah, you could be a millionaire now and you can afford a house with it. It's really gotten to that point. Like, you get $1 million and you're like, you can buy a house in New York now. Yay!
Well, I don't know about that. Well,
pretty dang close. I mean, even
Get a
in
little
we're in
shanty.
Minnesota, and average houses around here, like, just fairly standard, we're getting up to 500 grand. It's
Is that for like a
not
3-2
even
or
like,
something?
Is it what?
Like a 3-bed, 2-bath?
Yeah.
Less.
I don't know about less, but I would say pretty normally you can get the two bed 1 bath for that too, though. Well, you know, if it's in a depending on the
2-1
real
for
estate, I guess.
500,000?
It depends on the real estate specifically, especially if you're close to like a lake. It's gotten ridiculous. I mean, there are plenty of $1 million homes out here now that look pretty dang standard.
Fair enough. Well, tell you what, Sam, are you there? If you are, I'm going to give you a last word. Otherwise, we're going to keep the show rolling, brother. Give it a 3 count.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you now. All right.
All right. Well, I'm fighting the camera, but I can give you some sense here.
Yeah, jump in here.
Let's see what we're talking about. Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, definitely everybody wants more than they can have, and I would say that applies to not only the people who can make a lot of money, but even people who can make an average amount of money or even less. There's just like there's a big market to people who can like make junk and sell it cheap too. And it comes down like there's just so much. Our culture is just so wrapped around the pressure of having like convenient things that make our life easier. And like the laziness just ties into all of that. And it's just like, oh, well, I can spend my money to do this thing and make my life easier. So I'm just going to do that. And it takes serious like self-discipline and it takes serious like time and energy to commit to doing things like, oh, I'm going to cook all my meals. I'm going to like meal prep or just stuff like that. That's like, yeah, you can cut your budget down to, I don't know, $200, $300 a month of food instead of like $500 or $600. So, you know, like that's just the way our culture seems to be going. And definitely all of in terms of the people making a lot of money, I mean, it seems to become a game of who can have the cool toys in their driveway. And around the areas that I've seen, that's just something that it's just part of it.
I think you're definitely right. Go for it.
I want to touch
Yeah.
on that real quick. And with the state of how things have gotten to be, especially like in this last like 2-3 years, it doesn't even really change too much anymore to cook those meals at home. It doesn't really, it's not really even all that budget friendly. Like Sam was saying, you save like $200-300. At the end of the day, that's really not a lot. It used to be fairly significant to cook at home. I mean, other than McDonald's and fast food, like not counting that, but going out to eat like at nicer places was significantly more expensive than cooking at home. But now they're pretty close. So it's just we've had a lot of changes in the world recently that have just made it so much more difficult.
For sure. At the end of the day, it does require doing the math a little bit more to figure out like what actually do things cost now. Because there's upfront costs, but there's also hidden costs or built-in costs. Like, sure, you could cook everything you want, but you also have to take into account like all your ingredient costs, all the stuff that's like supplemental to it that you don't necessarily use with every meal. And then also your time. What's that worth? Like if you are one of those people trying to figure out if it's worth buying a cheaper house an hour away from the city or spending a little bit extra to be 15 minutes away, that's 45 minutes one direction. So basically an hour and a half every day. What do you value your time at? Does that matter?
Yep.
Can you use
Yeah,
it
it's
for
not
other
only that,
things?
but also health as well, too. If you think about it, like when it comes to the food, right? Like you can sit here and you can go buy like good ingredients that's actually healthy for you. It's not going to give you like gut rot or make you gassy or anything, right?
Yep.
But that's going to cost a lot more money. And that's what she was talking about, is just how much more that costs compared to like the real cheapy stuff.
For sure. I'm going to jump in here for a final thought on this slide before we move on to the next one. I think the one a criticism that I have for this book is that what I think a lot of people ideally want to be is neither of these. The idea is that you want to be somewhat in the middle, which is that you want to earn as much as you possibly can, and you also want to have a good lifestyle, but you're also building wealth at the same time.
Yes.
I'd argue that as we've gotten further into the 21st century, or actually in the 21st century to begin with, like this book is pre-internet. The world has absolutely changed. There are new ways of making money now that simply did not exist back then. And I think the goal for a lot of people in the modern era is that they want to earn a lot of money, build wealth, and then also maintain I'm not saying a crazy lifestyle, but something respectable so that you don't feel the pressure of living paycheck to paycheck and then trying to squeeze every last dollar just so you can throw a few extra into Bitcoin or something. All right. On to the next point. This is one that I told you folks to grab the calculators for. So we're going to do the net worth calculation. This is something that the book talks about as its benchmark for like what the book thinks you should be. So this is that good reference point that we can kind of tie to for the rest of the discussion around this book and what it believes people should be. So the equation that the book uses is the net worth that you should have, should is in very big scare quotes at this point, take your age, multiply it against your take-home pay, divide that number by 10. So, for example, if you are 40 years old and after taxes you make $140,000, at this point, your net worth should be $500,000. Real quick, panel, what do you guys think of that number? Will, what do you think?
I think that it's accurate from the perspective of like, you know, the richest man in Babylon. You take 1/10 of what you earn and you put it away. So like by that metric, like this would add up over time, and that would basically be what a net worth would be.
It's very interesting that you brought up the richest man in Babylon.
Yeah.
Because I did that math. We did the hand calcs here. All right, so according to our previous book, you should be investing 10% of everything you make. So let's assume, I will admit, my profile here might be a little bit of a unicorn, but I do think it is entirely possible. So imagine you're a 30-year-old. You did go to college. However, I don't know, you also slung pizza the whole time to help pay off some of those student loans, but you came out with about $20K in debt at about 8% interest rate. And for some reason, you're a crazy person. You want to pay it off in 10 years. So that comes out to be about $243 a month. Your job is respectable. You make $65,000 after taxes. I'm assuming that you started off at $55,000. So for the 8 years that you were earning after college, I assume that you make $60,000 per year. If you are saving 10% of that, that means that you are saving $6,000 per year. I gave you a annual 10% gain and compounded it monthly, excuse me. So your investment at the age of 30, after you started investing at 22, your little nest egg is now $74,000. You put in 48.5 yourself. You got 25.5 through the market gains. And then your debt, you're almost paying it off. You're 2 years away from paying it off, and you have about $5,790 remaining. This person's net worth is $68,410. According to the book, their net worth should be almost triple that at about $200,000. So this is Babylon math applied to Millionaire Next Door formulas. What do you guys think about these calculations? Is the profile that I built outrageous? Like, this seems pretty achievable to me.
Yeah, it seems fine to me. I would just say that 10% you got to invest in the Hex.
True. I mean, we did just have who do we have that comment from? Russ. Yeah, the book is also pre-T-shares. Remember, T-shares were not invented at this point, so Hex is not an option, unfortunately. Otherwise, our boy here would have been hit that 10,000x at 30. So, Sam, what do you think? What do you think about my numbers? How's this quick math for you?
Give me a second to catch up on the screen. I was fighting my phone.
You're good, brother.
It's my camera.
I will chime in while we're waiting
go
for
for
him to get situated. I will say that the math, I'm going to assume that the math is correct because I'm not double checking it. But like that's a reasonable number to have for somebody who's taught the right things like early on enough to implement them, and then also like has been making all the correct decisions. So the person has the information and they have like the willpower to execute it correctly, right? So like I would guesstimate that in those days numbers, man, I'm trying to like, I just don't know what money was worth back in the 90s, right? Like I would
It was worth
presume
a
that,
hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
Like $200,000 would have bought a lot more. I would say almost, and this is going off of my state, obviously, but $200,000 back then would have been worth probably right around $600,000 nowadays.
like I'm not sure what the minimum wage was then, and I don't know. Like minimum wage is irrelevant. Actually, I'm gonna choose a different metric. I saw somebody on social media the other day posted like, "Oh, it's like $25 an hour is the new $7 an hour these days," and I'm just like, that's kind of funny.
Real quick, Will, fun fact: the minimum wage in 1996 was $4.75.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where we
Out here where I'm at, it's 18 now.
Yeah, I think that the minimum wage as a legal requirement is irrelevant because like whatever people decide they're going to conduct work for is what they deserve to get paid. You know, like if a person doesn't have the leverage to say, "Hey employer, I'm going to work for this much money," then the employer says, "No, you're not." Then that person just doesn't have good leverage and they should go where they have good leverage, or they should just suck it up and figure their shit out. Like don't rely on daddy government to come save you via minimum wage. That's my 2 cents personally. But like
Good 2 cents. So
yeah, go
before
ahead.
I overwhelm you guys with the next slide, because I will warn you, it is a lot of numbers, and I did a lot of math for it. How do you guys? We're just going to go down to the panel. What do you think about this calculation? What do you think about the book's formula for calculating what you should be at net worth wise?
I feel like it's worthless.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's something rather than nothing. So like it's better than a person not having any plan or any goal. But like I don't think that it's like I think that as time moves forward, it's not quite so much like a linear equation of how fast you have to increase in net worth in order to remain competitive in society. It starts becoming exponential, you know, and I think that's kind of what Nate's driving at here, right? It's like the further we move through time, like the more and the more and the more and the more money we have to earn to like keep up with the cost and the effect of inflation. So like this is more of a linear equation, right? So like for those of you who aren't math gurus, like linear is like a straight line, right? Like the chart does this, and then exponential is like it starts off slow and then it freaking hockey sticks, right? So like the world is changing in like an exponential manner. We find ourselves like at the bottom of the like part of the curve, and I'm sure everyone probably thinks this like at all points throughout history, right? So it's not like I'm saying anything crazy special here, but like Like I think that like this is a good starting point, but it's like you need to get past the starting point very quickly and catch up, like snap back to reality, as my good friend Skittles would say.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and I wanna just go ahead and say something really short here.
Go for
This
it.
is actually decently close to like my salary, my average salary. And so this calculation, and I'm 31 rather than 30. So it's actually decently close to me. And when I look at this and I calculate it all out, after 10 years of me working in 4-degree weather and then, sweating my ass off in the summertime and all that, what I'm going to get is a very special 195,000. That's it. It's
Yeah.
definitely, the juice is not worth the squeeze in my opinion at all.
They did not
Okay,
have
so do you think that 195 is an accurate depiction of like what someone doing like quote unquote well should be at?
Hell
'Cause,
no.
like, I'll put it-
I would hear where I'm at. With that being accurate to like my position out here, that right there would get me a very rundown house.
I think that but that's like this is a wealth question, not necessarily like an indebtedness question, right? So this is like,
Correct.
this is cash that's working for you, right? So this would be like your portfolio, not like the house that you're living in or the car that you're driving, is I think the point. Is that
A
like the
little
point of
bit
where you're going with
a
this, Zenith?
little bit different from that is that this is net worth. So keep
Yeah.
in mind that this is all assets minus liabilities. So theoretically, like if you did have a house and it's only like 1/3 paid off, then that means that you are greatly the asset that you have, like let's say you bought a house for
It wouldn't
$300,000.
be an asset, it'd be a liability.
It would be a liability. However,
Yeah.
you would be able to claim that you have $100,000 in realized equity out of the house because you paid about $100,000 to the debtors, which means that your asset is $300,000, your debt is $200,000. Therefore, you have $100,000 worth of stuff based on everything you put into it, and then you have all your other stuff like 401k, stock portfolios, crypto portfolios, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I want to ask Mrs. McGettit, well, what do you think about these numbers? Like 30 years old, like you should be at $200,000 net worth. Does that, in your mind, does that sound reasonable?
No, with your explanation, I kind of wasn't sure what the heck net worth honestly meant until you just kind of, went over it there real quick. With that explanation, no, I kind of think that sounds ridiculous. If it's meant to be the sum of the whole of the value of everything you have and everything you are, and it's only, it just doesn't make much sense to me. Those numbers don't really add up to me.
I'll be honest, this is the part of the book that I kind of fought with the most as well, is that on the surface, the formula sounds reasonable. However, in practice, I think it grossly overestimates where you should be. Like, I'm going to try not to dox myself too hard or like act like I'm the shit or anything, but I think I'm a bit of an odd individual, which is that like I am completely debt free. I would argue that I think I'm doing pretty well in my life. I don't even come halfway to the number that this book tells me I should be.
Yeah.
So take that as
You're
well.
right.
I'm going to pipe in here because you mentioned like something that I was thinking about, which is nowadays, it's just the way that everything is taught and the way we're raised. I would argue that I know personally when I looked at this calculation, it's like, oh, well, hold on. So I could put any numbers in here and the net worth is going to be positive. Well, I got to fix that first. Like I got to get out of the zero.
Yep.
And like nowadays, it's like people are going to rack up the debt so fast and they're going to live just outside of their means or just barely at their means that like just getting past zero is going to be enough of a battle. And so when you have this calculation like this, it's like, okay, yeah, like Will said, it's nice to have some number, some goal. Yeah. But like, I got to, get past zero first.
For sure.
So like, good for you for doing that,
I'm much appreciated, but it's honestly nothing to shake a stick at. Speaking of numbers, though,
Well, hold on. Before we hop
we're
into
skipping
the
this
numbers,
slide. Nope.
before
We're deleting this slide.
before we go into the numbers, Zenith, I want to backtrack. It is something to shake a stick at. The fact that you like are debt free and stuff like that is important. That's something that like many people ought to aspire to do. I would say that our channel is, other than like the crypto OGs who made it or whatever, right? Like most of the channel, most of the people, like if you're like most folks, and most folks are, right, you're in the middle of the bell curve, which means that you're probably like most folks are probably in a significant bit of debt. Most folks are probably not doing the things that are like I do agree that these numbers are insufficient for like the goals that we have. However, I would say that these numbers are better than what most people are probably doing. And therefore, like if you can get to something like in the realm of this possibility, then you might not be doing well considering like maxing out your own potential. But like if you compare yourself to your peers and your competition in the world, right, like as at least inside the same part of the bell curve that you're in, you're probably doing pretty okay. So like being debt free is important.
I think what Zenith meant is even though he's debt free, he's not even coming close to this. So you would have to be very fortunate to get up that high. I think that's kind of what he meant
that's
there.
more what I'm saying. But Will
Yes.
actually does have a good point there. He's actually correct in correcting me on this. This is something I probably do a little too much, which is the self-depreciating humor. However, I will say this, that what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. And I'll put it this way. I'm friends with some psychopaths who, when we were in the military, they decided, fuck it, I will live on the ship, bank BAH. And then when COVID hit, they like yeeted their entire like savings into some aggressive stocks and like absolutely made it big. And I'm just sitting here like, oh crap, I've just been doing like bare minimum stuff. And I'm like, ugh.
Well, see, now you're in crypto though, so now you're the freaking psychopath.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna smoke these fools. They're laughing. They've been laughing at me buying Bitcoin for the last like 2 years, and I said, "Huh? How about that 3x? Huh?"
Yeah, whatever you do, just don't spend all your hex on a pizza.
Oh boy,
That's true. Don't buy a. I'm telling you now. If you pay 19,000 Bitcoin for one pizza, that's a bad deal.
Yep.
An important deal in history, but nowadays that's a bad deal.
Hey, you know,
All right, real quick. I know our producer did throw up in her mouth when I showed this next slide, but I do just want to point out like a few numbers. So like if you want to find yourself on here or find like where you want to be in the future, take a look at it. This is my second slide of sadness because I also inferred taxes on this, and it just reminded me that again, taxes suck. Also, This is a very crude application of taxes. Like if you look at that 30-year-old bracket, when it jumps from the 24% to the 32%, you technically lose money. That's because I did not perfectly take into account like the striations and the tax brackets. So these are all general estimations. But
So for the folks at home who don't know what striations are, that means like when you earn the bottom bracket, you pay that tax first, and then whatever income is left over goes into the next bracket up. It's not like if you make a big chunk of money, you pay a big tax chunk. It's like, no, you pay a whole bunch of little tax chunks in like that are all like combined together. So that's how that striations thing works. That's a good word.
Correct.
I like
So real quick, I'm going to reference, let's say you're a 50-year-old and you've been making $140,000. That means that according to the book, your net worth should be about $703,000 at the age of 50. Now, if you want to go to age 60, then that means that you should be getting closer to that million there at about 845,000. So again, this is pretty basic math. I just plugged it into Excel and just made a table. So do with it what you will. You could probably even recreate it on your own if you wanted. All right. So we've talked about this a good bit of do your calculation and how do you stack up? I told you mine and it's not even close. Also, don't dox yourself or overshare, but just think about it yourself. And then overall, I'll tell you this much. I think that everybody on this panel is a freaking winner. And no matter what this stupid formula says, I would rather be any one of us than people that aren't in this space and aren't making the hard choices and having discipline.
Everyone's a winner.
Every one of us is a winner.
Every one of us.
We are the winners, man. Think about it this way. What
100%.
about those losers that sold because Bitcoin going down?
True. We are in a crazy time for Bitcoin. All right, we've spent enough.
The only
on this
loser
topic.
here is the guy who bought the pizza.
Yep.
True. Although he did win in history. If you count
That's
that.
fair. And I want to say
All right.
I'm a stay-at-home parent, so I guess I'm kind of a loser too. My net worth is 0.
Nah, you're doing just fine.
Bullshit. That's it. This is something
Got
that
a
we.
kid,
I think I forgot
family.
to mention. Yeah, that's living large right there. That's being wealthy in ways other than money. All right. Do we have any last thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, Mrs. Mageddit can't be a loser because she's with a winner.
Hell
done.
yeah, that's the right
Well done.
idea.
Thanks, honey.
You
Alrighty.
guys are doing great.
Now's the part where we push back on the book a little bit. We have probably talked about this a good bit, but after doing some research, one of the main criticisms that I found for the book is that a lot of the people that the book profiles are people that have been very disciplined and very humble, and it's like people that are 60, 65 in retirement and like, oh yeah, no, my 401k really paid off. That was the good bet. And another one of the concerns that comes with this is that, cool, you did build wealth. However, you had to wait the majority of your life before you could even touch it. Like, not even to spend it, but to like have access to it. So like, even if you wanted to utilize it in some way, you're either A, going to have to pay a heavy penalty for drawing on your 401k early, or you're just going to have to wait.
I'll tell you, there's a huge difference between being a millionaire at 35 and being a millionaire at 65. Just like considering the amount of stress your joints will experience when you go down that water slide, or like when you're riding on that jet ski, or when you're skydiving in Paraguay, or whatever it is. Like I never was much of a big fan personally of waiting for like shitty returns. It's like, oh, when you're almost dead, you'll have so much money, you can do whatever you want. It's like, that's a terrible plan. That's so
When you're
slow and
almost dead,
inefficient.
Will.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's face it, like people in the latter halves of their life, it's not their golden years. Your golden years is like, when you can jump up and down, right? Like old people can't do that. Like how often do you see a 50-year-old like jumping up and down, unless he's like some bodybuilder or guru or whatever? But like,
Will, have you never seen the Six Flags commercial?
look,
Come on,
commercials are not indicative of anything other than like, I need to sell you an experience, so you buy my product.
I will say this though, I think you're absolutely correct. When it comes to living your life, having access to larger capital to do bigger things early on is always going to be better. However, at the same time, even if there's nothing wrong with living a normal, humble life and living up to the values that you set for yourself based on your God, your principles, whatever. Having a family, there's nothing wrong with that. And the upside to actually, I don't know, saving this money in a way that you can't touch it until you're really old is that you are thinking about building and leaving a legacy for children or the people to come. Even if you don't want children, you can set up some sort of fund or like some sort of nonprofit to help make the world a better place in how you see fit. That's something you can do with it. And I think that's something that as people age becomes more and more attractive. I mean, right now I don't have any kids, so like not really too concerned about that, other than just continuing to build the nest eggs. That way, one day there is an empire to hand to someone else.
I want to. I like you are correct. There is nothing wrong with people like living humble means and doing humble things. If that's like what your set of desires are, then like more power to you. The thing I always think about whenever I hear that is like, there's nothing wrong with being a 3-legged dog. That dog can still live a happy and wonderful life, but it's got 3 fucking legs, and it'd be way better to be a dog with 4 legs that can do 4-legged dog things. So like I think of like a dog can't choose to grow his legs back, obviously, so flawed analogy, but it's like, it's bombastic for that reason. It's like, I would much rather have more tools and more ability to do more things than the alternative. And that's just me personally. Like, if you can find happiness serving coffees and sweeping floors and building towers and spraying bugs and building houses and managing projects, then I think that more power to you. But eventually we're going to break out of this system, and then we'll find bigger and better things to do. Or maybe we won't. I think Sam will probably be building houses for the rest of his life anyways, and you'll probably catch me hanging out from towers. I don't know if
you mind if I butt in here?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, go for it.
This is the place for everyone to jump in and beat up the book.
Yeah,
fuck this book.
I got a strong opinion about this one. So the book, throughout the book, it talks about how, you're building generational wealth by, quite frankly, sacrificing things you might want to do, right? Like luxurious type lifestyle stuff, and able to be frugal. And whereas there's nothing wrong with that, exactly as you said. Well, you know, if that's your fancy, that's your fancy. Nice, go do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But they
Some-
emphasize in the book, and this is like that programming thing that you were talking about. They emphasize so much of like frugal good, luxury's bad. They emphasize it so much that, and then even in
Yeah.
the own book, they reference that wealth, that generational wealth that is built through these great things about being this way, usually dries up by right around the third generation. And I'm like, okay, so what you, the book, have just told me throughout your stats and everything is that you work your entire life, you sacrifice all the, quite frankly, all the luxuries that you would have wanted, just so that you can pay for your children and your grandchildren to have to squander all
That's
that
gone.
instead, and
Yep.
then it's gone. And now
Yep.
where's your generational wealth? You sacrificed yourself for that, and that is not cool. And I know that
Bro.
maybe people may seem like maybe that's a little bit selfish, but god damn it, dude, I'm the one working and I'm the one building this wealth. I deserve to live the way I want to live. And
You're-
then you know
you're
what? Here's the other
Fucking
thing.
right.
The other thing about this is there are other ways that you can continually having the money building, and then on top of it, like different types of ways that money can be distributed to your children. Maybe you give them just enough where it's like, hey, it's nice that I've got, you know, some free income, but it's not enough for me to completely live on, so therefore I need to go do a job. So therefore you are technically helping your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren all the way through for generations on, and it's all because of you.
Yep.
Plus, you got to live that luxurious life. That's my opinion.
No, I think you have some very good points there. I think what this book is able to do is this book is able to tell you how people have done this in the past, and this is what people have been doing. This is not really a prescription book, although it definitely comes off that way. It is a book that is studying people from the past. It is studied the millionaires and says, what was the most common reason that these people are in this group? This is the reason that those people are in this group. So you can also infer from that the people that are not in this group, chances are they probably didn't do a whole lot of this stuff. So that is really just the what the book is able to do, is give you a perspective of what people have done in their lifetimes. And then, like you said, unfortunately, there is a bit of an effect where wealth is lost after a third generation typically. And the book tries to touch on this a little bit later on, which is how to instill, like, what are the ways to not raise little shits that are going to blow all your
Yes.
money.
Thank you.
That is something for you to figure out on your own or in a different book, in my personal opinion. But at the same time, though, you do have a point, which is that, like, living is pain, but that's just me and my knees. But living a good life is something that only you can determine for yourself. Obviously, all of us are in the financial space, so we're very focused on this, and we're very focused on trying to build wealth quickly. And I personally still am interested in the idea of generational wealth, of building something that is so large that I can leave it behind for other people and try to teach them and not just spoil them and be like, hey, kid, yours now. Here are the keys. Don't fuck it up.
Oh, yikes, that's scary. And to be fair, too, like, we're kind of protesting on these particular areas of the book, but if you do go through the book, there are good, I would say, foundational things for your financial journey. I would say they're probably a little bit more on the basic level, but then with the statistics and the whole study that went on with this, exactly as you said, Zenith, to look at least back in history, this was the way, and it worked great, and this is exactly how it worked. You need history. Right? You absolutely have to understand these things to see where you were, right? Just don't take it as like a step-by-step, here's how you do it nowadays.
For sure. There's absolutely things and points that are still applicable today. I just think the numbers and the methods have changed. The foundational principles of, like, I don't know, live below your means, don't live paycheck to paycheck, save money and invest. That's very standard stuff. But this is a window into the world of the past. Again, I'm going to harp on this. This is all pre-internet. Very much pre-internet, like late 80s even, when the study was started. So the idea of the internet and all the new ways of making money on there, or all the ways of using that to apply to old conventional methods, like, I don't know, advertising, promotion, like even investing. Like, you don't have to go meet up a broker. You can log on to Fidelity now. Like, the methods have changed. The principles Some of them are still the same, but like you said, I think there is a good chunk of this book that is old conventional wisdom of the past, or the system, so to say. Like, this book is very much that. There was a good argument my buddy in high school had with this counselor that was trying to talk to us about college. And they were like, all right, yeah, so here's your college presentations. Make sure you pick a good college. And the guy was like, all right, why do I need to go to college? And they're like, well, so that you can get a good job. And the guy's like, why do I need to get a good job? And they're like, so you can pay off your student loans. And he's like, okay. What? He's like, you see how you went in a circle there?
Oh my God. Just do it, you good little factory worker.
Yeah. So conventional wisdom is
Yeah.
shifting as the times shift. Mrs. McGinnis, what you got?
I just wanted to bring up the story that they had about, I don't remember the name of the person, but they were talking about somebody who had been a millionaire and who she passed away. And it was like the tax brokers talking to each other. And he was like, oh, she's robbing us and blah, blah, blah. The guy's just going on and on about it. Because what she did is she put it all in stocks and she never took it out. It was unrealized gains for her whole life. She never touched it. And then when she passed away, she donated it all or gifted it to family. And that story, I kind of love it because it's like, yeah, get the tax man, screw that guy. But then it also frustrated me so much because it's like, if she put all that money into stocks and then literally just never used it, like, why? If it only got up to, I think they said she had like 2 million is what it ended up being, or what they should have been taxing her for. But she put that all into stocks, and if it was mostly sitting in there for years and years and years, she could have been moving that around, making it actually work. And that's kind of what we've been touching on here, is like, most of these people back in the time frame, they didn't do any of that. It just was not a thing. And it being predated internet makes a lot more sense. I actually didn't really realize that, that didn't click in my head, but that kind of makes this whole book almost irrelevant to me now.
Yeah.
Like I would not take any tips or tricks from this. There's some very good hardcore standard principles for life. Don't be a dumbass. Don't waste your money on stupid shit. But I mean, other than that, there's a lot of stuff that's really outdated.
You have a very good point that you alluded to there that didn't outright come and say, but I think it's this, is that in today's day and age, I do think the average person is a lot more financially savvy and educated on the different ways to make money work for you. I think back in the day, a lot of this stuff wasn't taught. And if it's not taught today, it definitely wasn't taught back then, even though we have the internet and literally the entire amalgamation of human knowledge at your fingertips. But again, we instead choose to use it to watch cat videos and play Clash of Clans. But
don't you bash those cat videos, sir.
Maybe some
Look,
folks.
As someone that enjoys those as well, and I record my own when my cats are fighting each other, and one almost pushed the other one off the second-story balcony the other day.
Floofers.
Yeah, excellent stuff. But yeah, like, you do have a good point, which is that we do have a deficit of financial knowledge today, but we are in a better place than previously. And the only direction this is going to keep moving is forward. More and more people are going to learn. The world is always going to be more competitive, but there's always going to be new opportunities and new ways to innovate and expand beyond your current potential. So I think that's the saving grace of that.
That's definitely true. And I've been hearing recently, according to statistics, apparently more and more kids are being homeschooled instead of being sent to traditional schools, because traditional schools still are not teaching people this stuff. So people are keeping their kids home and instead actually focusing on this, literally financial freedom. They're teaching their kids this stuff instead of sending them off.
Sam, you have I want to, like, I know we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but Sam, like, do you have any insight on homeschooling children and things of that nature? I know that you and I had a podcast about stuff similar to this just the other day. Would you like to pop in here? Kind of putting you on the spot. I can't see if you got your, there you go.
Yeah. How's my sound coming through to you guys?
You're pretty good.
It's decent.
Not perfect, but it's pretty good.
So, yeah, I mean, so I went through some stuff from Ron Paul, I believe is his name.
Yep. Ron Paul.
And, kind of like how I talked about earlier, in that, our education system is not as like necessarily the number one option anymore. And so with the tools that we have, I'm more interested in like exploring all of the possibilities before just going with what we've always done. And, you know, I think anyone who is, you know, interested in like not blindly following the norm should do the same. And it's like, it's all the same kind of person to me. It's like, if you're going to be this, you're going to try to build wealth and you're going to try to keep it, you know, you're going to want to learn what are the best ways to do that nowadays. And especially if you want that to stay in the family, then, you know, you ought to be employing all of the tools you have necessary for your kids to have the best edge with everything that we have nowadays. So I'm not sure if that's what you're aiming at, but you know, that's my take on it. And so that kind of plugs into the homeschooling thing, because a lot of what Ron Paul was talking about was how there are many education systems now that exist, and you know, you do not have to stick with like the basic public schools anymore.
I will say this. It's a decent segue into our next topic, which is how inheritance and gifting money can screw up your kids, or you can try to not screw up your kids. So these are the two chapters that I think are the most interesting in this book per se. And it's talking about how gifted money affects people's psychology and how they plan and budget and spend. So the book calls it economic outpatient care, when parents gift money to their children regularly. And the book finds that there's kind of like a weird, perverse relationship between it, which is that to begin with, the children who receive gifts from their parents are not the ones that you typically would think of. It finds that people who are in like high paying professions and jobs who end up being those under accumulators of wealth because they keep spending it, those are the ones that oftentimes are gifted money. And oftentimes it has certain effects, like we see here, the quote unquote lucky children who receive to tend to develop bad habits. One of the things is that they consume a lot more than they save or invest. As part of regularly receiving money, they are unable to distinguish between their own wealth and their parents, and their minds, it just starts to blend together, and it becomes something that they start relying on, and it becomes routine, and they actually start putting it inside of their own math if they are doing any math. And then lastly, these are the same people that are much more likely to depend on credit instead of actually paying stuff off over time, and they use debt in arguably the wrong ways. Additionally, these group of people also has a larger propensity to spend inheritance rather than their own self-generated money, which is that when the money does come in, it's usually thought of as more disposable than the money that they had to work for, because the money that they work for, they feel a little bit more attachment to it. So they think that it needs to go towards better things, versus the stuff that you got free can go to the stuff that gets used quickly and then is done with quickly.
Bro, the ledger's got a balance. Like people who get stuff for free. This is one of my big gripes with taxation. It's like people or entities that get something that's valuable without having to sacrifice for it don't inherently value, or don't inherently like treat that thing with as much respect or as much like covetous jealousy, like whatever words you want to like throw in there, right? Pick your word of choice. But like, people don't value things that they don't sacrifice for. Like, you have to pay a price in order to appreciate something. Like, I'm a very firm believer in that. And when like stuff comes at no cost, like, it's generally squandered. You know, like, think about your tax dollars. Your tax dollars are money being sent to a person who doesn't know you, doesn't care about you. They get the money for free and they can spend it on whatever the fuck they want. Like, when you spend your money, like money that you earn, you know, you have your own best interests in mind, and you also like had to do stuff to get that money. You had to trade value in order to receive it, right? So like, in this example, the kids who get free money from their parents, essentially, like, it's like giving, you know, crack to a crack addict. It's like, it's going to make them just more of a crack addict. It's gonna put them worse off. I'm not being very like great with words here, but I absolutely agree with the concept.
No, you're right. And by the way, when we are talking about like kids and children in this case, these are like adults in like
Adult
20s
children,
and
yeah.
30s, adult
Yep.
children, so to speak. So
Yeah, the
that's
book
context
specifies
of
that
this.
Other
too.
people at some
Yeah.
point.
Can
I
we
wanted
bring up
to-
Willie's? I was going to say, can we bring up Willie's chat real quick? He had
Oh,
this
this
is
one again?
Yep, that is exactly the idea behind these two chapters, is that inheritance is a blessing and a curse, and it's up to you to teach people how to either wield it or be wielded by it. So this is the part of the thing where it is the curse, where this thing is being given to you, and you're not well equipped to handle it. So it's going to mess with you in the wrong kind of ways, as opposed to the next chapter, which I will flip over to real quick, talking about how the ways to combat this. The book says it's not necessarily bad to give money to your children as long as they're disciplined and generate income on their own first. The issue is where children rely on the money coming in to survive. This is exactly what Will was alluding to earlier, which is that if you work for the things first, you understand the value and you feel the value as well, so that anything coming in extra, it's exactly that. It's just extra, and you have the discipline and practice to use your previous good principles and apply it to the new stuff. And then the book gives some tips. I'm not going to take parenting advice from this book necessarily, but these are the tips it gives. Is that you want to grow smart, independent kids. Don't let them know you're wealthy, at least until your children are professionally established well. Teach discipline and frugality. Those are both of the things that we talked about previously are needed to make sure that you're established first. And then this is the one that I thought was most interesting out of them all, which is that emphasize achievement, not material status symbols. And specifically, I think achievement is the key word here. This isn't necessarily saying competition, but it's saying achievement. Achievement is different from competition, which is that everyone can win and there doesn't have to be a loser. Competition is absolutely valuable and will teach you many things about yourself and life. Sports are fantastic for this. However, at the end of the day, in a workplace, you don't necessarily need to be competing with your coworkers. You guys need to achieve things as a team. So, emphasizing achievement, not material status symbols, saying that you are known for the things that you do, not the things that you have.
Yes, that's one of the 3 quotes that I had written down from this book is the things that you have accomplished or the goals that you've made, not the things that you own. No, like when you go over to your friend's house and they show you their new, like, I don't know, deck of cards that they got over in Paraguay. It's like, oh, neat, you went to Paraguay and got a deck of cards. Boy, oh boy, am I happy for you. But when they tell you like a super cool story about like how they saved, I don't know, a child from getting eaten by an elephant or something, it's like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, I personally think, because, elephants eat lots of children, but like, I think that this, like, they absolutely nail it on the head here. Like the achievements are way more important than like the monetary, you know, well, not monetary metrics isn't the right word. Just like the stuff, like, oh, cool, I have a phone, or wow, look at this nifty bottle cap that I got, guys. Like, I could show you all around my super fancy Conics, and I could show you all the things, or I could, like, tell you the stories of like how we got here to the DGen Roundtable, like the summation of our lives. Like, things are more interesting from like a listener's perspective, or stories are more interesting than things from a listener's perspective. And then also, like, I kind of want to like compare this to like chopping wood. you know like, it's cooler to see a pile of wood that you've chopped up and stacked than it is to be like, look at this fancy axe that I bought, right? So this just
Any
a little.
chance I could butt in?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're going to go
for it.
around the
Sorry.
horn on this one.
Okay, I
What you
just wanted
got?
to say, I think this was probably one of my favorite parts of the book. I think it really, really applies to kind of our generation, or the people who are just a little bit older than us. I've known a lot of people who their parents are still very much financially supporting them, even though they're basically completely independent. And it's just crazy to see, like, that sort of, it gives a really bad idea of entitlement to a lot of people, where I mean, they say it in the book too, it becomes something that the people started factoring into their actual yearly budget. They just knew it was going to be there, and they actually had to have discussions like, oh, well, what happens when mom passes away? Then we don't have that extra money. Their mom was giving them like 15 grand, which is just, I mean, think about that. Holy crap, that's a ton of money.
This is also
And
1996, 15 grand as well.
yeah, exactly. I mean, when you did that chart earlier, the $1 million is almost 2 million now. So it's almost double. You can pretty much double it, and just an easy way to kind of get the math going in your brain there. So it's really damaging for kind of our generation to have that accessibility without having to work for it. And it's kind of I've also experienced the reverse of that, where a parent will give their kid money and then they're like, go buy this or that with this, I want you to do this with it. You're like, well, I would like to like save it or invest it, and then they get mad about it. No, you can't do that. I gave you it because I wanted you to go buy this specific thing. It's like, but
Well,
you
that's
gave me
slavery. That's slavery. That's indebtedness right there.
it. Yeah, it's really weird because I've seen so many examples of this in the real world. Just in these last like 20 years, it seems to be a really, really big problem right now.
I hear that. As a bit of a callback to a previous episode, I want to say it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, where Kiyosaki gave an example of this one guy who his family friends with, and his son wanted money for something, and instead he gave him like $3,000 and told him that it was exclusively to be used for the stock market, and any money that he made out of that he could then spend on the car that he was originally asking for. And as a result of it, the kid was like, who cares about cars, man? This stuff's way more fun. I like investing and playing the market. So he was like, yeah, $3,000. And I taught my son how to invest and trade and actually like deal with money in the real life. Well worth it. So
yeah. And it's
good
fun
thoughts.
that it's funny that you bring that up, because I was going to mention Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think a lot of these tie into that book. I've seen a lot of stuff that they've been talking about that the rich dad displayed like living below his means. He lived in, they talk about it. He lives in like this rickety old house, even though the guy's got like 6 restaurants or something that he owns. I don't remember the exact numbers, but the point being, he does kind of display a lot of these traits. So that's another, I guess, kind of defense of the book. There are still some good elements in it.
Oh, for sure. All right, kick it over to Mr. Nate. What you think?
Well, see, the thing is, it's not like, living under your means or being frugal or anything like that is wrong. However, I am of the belief that there comes mindset changes. So living, beneath your means, saving and doing things like that, possibly save so that way you can put into a type of investment that requires a minimum, right? I think that's not a terrible idea, and you should do that. But I also think that there does come a time when it's like, hey, I've got $2 million in the bank. Let me throw it into these particular mutual funds that's going to get me like a 10% yearly return. And now I'm sitting here with what would that be, like $200,000 a year? Cool. I can basically retire on that and live the same way I've been living. And then, okay, cool. Now I can go out and start doing what it is that I want to do, which, like say you like music, right? But you haven't been able to do any music because you work freaking like 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And by the time the one day off you get, you're so tired, you just sleep through it all. Right. Well, now you have infinite amount of time as you want. I call it buying time back. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you start working hard at that particular thing that you're doing. And then maybe you're starting to become popular and you get a whole lot more money and you become like, say, 10 million in the bank now. Okay, cool. Well, now that you've got your money working for you because you do the exact same thing, put it into something that, gives you more money. Now you've gotten to a point where it's like, hey, I've done the work. I have enough money now where I can easily start spending money on things that I never thought I would have been able to spend money on. So why not splurge a little bit, treat myself a little bit? I can get out of the mindset of having to be frugal because I don't need to be frugal anymore. And I think that's where you want to ramp up to when you hit that point, right? Now, that doesn't mean you're not like investing anymore and you're just throwing money to the wall. I think that's the point that they were getting to, is like you get the people who live like just throwing everything at the wall, just spending it all, but it's like, hey, let me spoil myself a little bit and then I'll have a little bit more, go somewhere else for investment. That's my thoughts. I think it's an evolving mindset.
Fair enough. All right, Sam, throwing it to you. What do you think about the psychology of giving money to your children? Like, either you can use it for good or bad. What do you think?
So I think it's definitely something that can be done for good, but the way that it strikes me as it's most effective is that the money should be used not gifted directly. So I think the money should be applied to create an opportunity for something. But I do not think that like, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000 or I'm going to give you, $100 to go buy this thing you want, right? What seems more important to be done with the money is to instill, like, I would want the children to understand like what the money represents. The money is value. The money is energy. The money has potential. It has all of these capacities to do things. And like, while some people might just say, well, yeah, I'm going to give you a gift. Yeah, it means that you can go do whatever you want with that money. But what I would rather do is I would rather take the money and say, okay, well, you mentioned that you wanted to learn how to ice skate, or you wanted to be a great ice skater or a great singer or something. So let's take this money and we're going to apply it towards a process. Let's say we get a coach or someone to help you learn how to sing. You want to be a great singer. I'm going to give you the gift because I'm going to use my resources to present you this opportunity, right? But we want to convert that opportunity into something that you are going to learn from. And now I'm going to take that, like the energy and the value that I've created, and I'm going to pass it through the system. And if you put the work in, you're going to benefit from it. And now you can turn that around, take that same value that you've got. Now you're a great singer and you want to be a pop star. Now you can go be a pop star, and that makes more money and gives you more value. So like, it seems to me like I would want my gifts to be opportunities to learn what money actually can do.
Dan, that's a fantastic point. If anything, I think the book backs you up on that, which is that the one thing they talk about, the millionaires do spend a lot of money on, is they're very passionate about saving money for their children's education. So they might not necessarily be buying their children a lot of stuff like as they're growing up. However, they've been saving that nest egg for college so that when it does come time, they can at least gift an education to their children and set them out into the world debt free. So I think that's right up the alley. You're thinking very similar to the book there. Good stuff. All right. Any final thoughts before we move off of this?
Yeah, I got a little derailed there. I forgot we were talking about the kids. My bad.
You're good, brother. You're good.
Long story short, with the kids, I think it's basically this, right? just a quick summation. With your sons, I think they should be following you around, but have, other than learning from you, they shouldn't really have any monetary help from you at all, and they should go do it themselves and build it themselves based on the knowledge you have given them. When it comes to your daughters, I believe they should get all the financial help they would need, but if they start really mucking around with it and doing some weird things and just not good stuff, you cut them off. But then also, if they do get married to the man of their dreams, then you also cut them off because it's his turn now.
Fair enough. That's some good stuff. All right, we can go back to full view on the panel. I don't have a slide for this one, but the final topic that I wanted to bring up with us is in relation to the psychology of money, and more of money that you didn't explicitly work your sweat and back muscles for to gain, and that would be crypto gains. Do you guys foresee any psychological challenges or barriers that you might have to overcome if, per se, your crypto goes to the moon and you make more money than you ever thought you could? Like,
mind if I start here real quick?
Go for it.
I just want to say I've heard this before. I'm not really sure where it came from, but it was somebody who has traditional wealth and then also got a bunch of money in crypto. And what they said is basically kind of where I think I agree. Or I guess I worded that weird, but you get the point. If the only money you've ever made is through crypto, you have no idea what to do with money.
Or you know exactly what to do with money.
Yeah, Hexagon Lost in Asia knows what he wants to do with it. He says hashtag sudden Lambo syndrome.
Sudden Lambo syndrome.
That is 100% correct. Actually, I would argue against that, because there are a lot of, at least right now, I mean, I guess before it used to not really be so much. It's like kind of like buy an NFT and now you're rich, right? But now we're getting things like, okay, so what am I going to do with my crypto gains? Am I going to be putting it into stable pools and yielding pools and things like that? Or am I going to bring it out to the stock market and have it in yielding pools, aka mutual funds as well? It's basically the same thing. You need to know how to run it, though. In fact, I would say that crypto is probably a little bit harder because you have to do it yourself. You have to be your own bank with your own security rather than throwing it at BlackRock and saying, hey, take care of this for me. I'm just saying, I think it's a little bit harder in crypto. And I think if you've made money in crypto, you are one of two things. You will either really know what you're doing or you got lucky and then you lose it.
a fellow degenerate gambler of ours in the chat, Willie B. Long, has a good comment. Kind of going back to the kids thing earlier, is you got to keep your daughter off the pole or off OnlyFans, or they will run into a sugar daddy. It gets dicey in this day and age. The shit keeps me awake at night. I know that Willie has some wonderful children's of his own, and he's absolutely right. That's a very important thing. And this, like, I know we just kind of like tied up this topic, but like just to rehash, it's very important to teach your children a good, like, fundamental system of values and self-worth and like appreciation, just like all the good like characteristics of like what a good person would be, justice, truth, honesty, loyalty, like whatever little moniker in the Marine Corps. It was JJ did tie buckle, justice, judgment, decisiveness, a whole bunch of things. I'm not going to run down the list and bore you guys all to death, but like, yeah, it's very important to teach your kids the right things, so that way they don't turn into adults that are like, not so great in the sphere of like, bringing honor to the family and everything, but also so that way they don't like monetarily drain you later in life. There's more ways than one where like being an ineffective parent can like not only screw the children over, but screw the parent over in the long run. What was your question again, Zenith, for this thing that we're now talking about? I wanted to shout that out real quick for you.
Oh, you're good. No, that was fantastic. I was going to say, Hex Lost in Asia also has a good point to transition to the topic I was talking about, which is that he says delayed gratification trains your mind to know what it took to that point of sudden wealth. What I was asking before is there theoretically, if everything comes as it should, is that there theoretically should be a point in the next somewhere in the next 4 years where all of our portfolios go to the moon. We finally make those returns that we've been waiting this entire bear market for. And now there's all this new wealth that we didn't really have to work like physically for. So do you anticipate any psychological like issues or things you might have to overcome with that?
I personally think that
What are you talking about? I was sweating like crazy when I thought I would be losing all my money.
Yeah. Okay. So
we have been sweating.
There is
that much.
There's absolutely a mental tax. There's an attention tax. There is a stress tax. Like unless you just do everything right, like you're gonna watch the red candles at some point. And so it's like, well, if you skip that point, then congratulations, you fucking binked it, as our friend Sami would say. But like I personally don't think that I'm going to be like, I can't speak for anyone else on the panel, but I think that I'm going to be fine in that respect, because of just living a very I don't want to say difficult adult life, but like I've been through plenty of stresses, and I'm just pretty like Shaka Hakuna Matata now. It's like I've slept in the dirt. I've gone overseas. Like I've hung out. I've done some silly things. I've almost died several times. So I think I'll probably be okay from like a mental point of view, but it'll be very strange having a very large toolbox of options of like, oh, what can I do with my time and stuff now that I don't have to like worry about selling my time for money hanging off a tower. Now I can go hang off a tower for free and just kind of fuck off in my time in the free times. So
that's true.
Mail orders, a fourth, and then a fifth, and then a sixth coffee maker.
Yes, I'll have so many coffee makers.
One Lambo.
I can get down with that. Down with that. I got to say this, Nate, that feeds into something you were talking about previously, which is at a certain point, you get to reclaim your time. So let's say you, for example, when you do finally get to reclaim your time, what do you want to do with it?
Well, quite frankly, there's always a new mountain to climb. So the first mountain right now is buying back my time. Once I buy back my time, then it's going to be achieving any dream that I have, right? Maybe there's multiple dreams. I'll work towards them. But the next thing is going to be, trying to get somewhere of some kind of status with one of those dreams of mine. And then once that happens, you're going to want to build up to the next one. Hilariously enough, this is a weird one for me, and very personal, I guess, because we all have our like personal goals. I want a very, very large mansion, one of those mega mansions or whatever, with all the fun little toys. With an absolutely incredible view. I can wake up every single day looking at that view. That's one of my end goal dreams, which is a little bit strange, right? But it's definitely one of those things. And I would say, like, at that point, I'm gonna have to at the very least get anywhere from like 20 million to maybe even up to 60 million and able to achieve this. But it all is going to be customized. Funny
Fair
little
enough.
goal, right? But
No, I think Will alluded to it a little bit earlier when he's talking about, yeah, there's something about him that still wants to go hang off of TV towers, even if it's for free or quote unquote free, or at least the salary's not going to be able to even compare to the portfolio. And that's purpose and drive. It's the adventure. It's something you're chasing after. Sam, you got a comment on this? What do you do when the paycheck no longer gets you going in the morning?
Well, that is going to be pretty simple. Pretty sure I've found my one thing, and that is for nerding out and spamming YouTube with me building random things on the internet and helping more people. I'd probably, I would combine travel in there with that in terms of traveling to meet more people and learn more about building in different areas. But it's going to be, if I get a good chunk from the crypto turnaround and everything, then I'm going to want to, if I've got a good bag to sit on that allows me the time to do other projects, then the first projects I'm going to be doing are building things that are going to make me more money, probably real estate. And doing that, inviting people to join, teaching people, I've learned a lot from a lot of wonderful people who have given away their knowledge for free, and I just want to turn around and just keep doing that. So that's what I'm going to keep doing most likely. So I'm just, beware to be and subscribe to Bungalows for Bachelors, because it's just going to be notify every day.
We're going to be seeing some wild videos coming up, huh? All right, I like it. Let's throw it over to our other panelist, Mrs. Producer. What do you think? Do you think crypto has the potential to, I don't know, wreck people's mindset a little bit?
Well, I know he was joking, but Hexagon Lost in Asia kind of put that up there for me. Hang on one second. Ready to go. Oh, I lost it. But he said when Lambo. And I kind of think, oh, here we go. Sudden Lambo syndrome. That's what it was. Yep. I think that's going to happen to way too many people. Now, we have the good fortune of the people on this panel are smart. You guys have brains. You guys have been thinking about your futures. You guys have been actually planning to do something with this. But there are way too many people. And this happened in one of the previous bull runs. And that's where that person that I had quoted came from. That, I mean, in his opinion, people who get all their money through crypto don't know anything about money, because crypto made it really, really easy in that particular time frame. There was a lot of overnight millionaires, so to speak. And I saw a bunch of them in the communities that I'm in Facebook and, on other social medias. I saw a lot of people who just suddenly were like, oh, I have all this money. I'm going to literally blow it immediately. It's gone. And it's gone. You've seen the South Park episode. We've all heard that. It's just immediate. It's like, oh, okay. So you got to have a mindset to be able to keep it and to be able to grow it instead of just spending it frivolously. And fortunately, I think everybody here does. And hopefully our viewers do. Or if they don't, we can help them. But it's definitely a risk. You know what I mean? Because when something just seems too easy, like you said, you don't have to do any backbreaking work for this. You just have to keep up with it. You have to pay attention to it, and you have to be able to understand what is going on. So it's a lot more like mind work, which comes across a lot easier for people. It doesn't feel like you've done as much. And especially if you have somebody holding your hand the whole time and you're not digging into it like we've been. Like all of you guys have dug into it. I mean, you wouldn't be able to produce the content you do if you hadn't. So you've got an advantage there. But all those people, like, there are millions, probably. I haven't seen billions, but I've seen at least a good couple hundred that are like, let me give you money, put it into crypto for me. It's like, you don't learn anything that way. It's easy come, easy go.
You learned from the Nigerian prince who's trying to send you 2 Bitcoin after you send him 1, right?
Oh yeah, that's guy's the best teacher out there. He's my best friend.
Teaching moment.
He's got all my family out there with him. He needs money for grandma. We got to get grandma back home.
Exactly. I guess I'll try to have a little moment of self-reflection here. So my hobby is collecting hobbies. I am also that guy when I play video games where the most interesting factor for me is just watching the little money number go burr and just try to get it as high as I possibly can. something I've already caught myself doing and that I've had to remind myself of, like, we built a plan for a reason, you idiot. We're going to stick to it. Is that I'm like, oh, wow, if we hit these numbers, I could like turn this into like pure real estate and like go buy all these different properties, or like it'd be cool to like buy my dad a Rolex, like the one he's always wanted. And it's like, all right, all the wisdom we've talked about previously has said that diversification is cool to a point. However, you got to be good at the thing that you're good at. Apparently, we're all getting pretty good at crypto, which means that for me, the money that I put into crypto, there's a good chunk of it that needs to stay here so that it keeps growing and we don't just become a one cycle, one hit wonder. So for me, it's have the plan, understand how much we're going to have to pay in taxes, unfortunately. Hate that a lot. Or we move to Puerto Rico. We'll see. I'll put it this way. If it looks like my portfolio is going to do a 50x before July 1st, 2024, I will be moving to Puerto Rico this year so that we can hit those sweet 2025 tax returns and pay zero capital gains tax. But for me, it's making the plan, sticking to it, which is that, all right, cool. Yeah, we are going to take some of the gains and we're going to make sure they go to other investments. Other investments, Zenith, nothing else, or maybe nothing too crazy. We'll buy Dad the Rolex, I'll say that much. And then outside of that, make the plan, stick to it, understand that we're in this for the long term. Long term is longer than one cycle. So that's where I'm at. Do I sound crazy? What do you guys think?
I almost think that's something that the book was trying to say.
Yeah.
I almost think that's something that the book hinted at a little bit there.
A little bit. I will say this. One of the things that I don't know if we've given the book enough credit for is that the book talks about how the millionaires it studied, they are very, very attentive to their own investments, and they do hire professionals to help them a bit. However, at the end of the day, they're doing a lot of research and they make a lot of their own investment decisions. Granted, the book does talk about like it's more of like stock portfolios in that matter, instead of like the very diversified world of investments that we have today. So yeah, I'm still going to be doing research, still going to be making my real life money number, try to go as high as I can.
Well, to add on to that then, I mean, so you know about my tier system, right?
Let's hear it.
Okay, so tier system for you crypto degens out there who are thinking, oh, it's going to go to $1 billion and I'm going to be rich, right? Billion. No, it's not necessarily going to work that way. You need to have a tier system. You need to have your low expectations. If the worst happens, this is what I'm expecting to hit. You need to have your expected, right? This is where I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up hitting as far as gains go. Then you have your high, like, hey, this was really good. It's right around, like, it's higher than what I was expecting. I'm happy. Then you have your moon, and your moon's like, whoa, wow, it actually happened, right? So, like, for me personally, my low tier is going to be 200,000, right? My mid tier is going to be 500,000, and then I've got what was it, 750, so basically 250 throughout. So I'm just making it easy. But then I've got my moonshot, which is going to be 1.3 million, and so I change my plan on how I'm going to reinvest to buy my time back based on what I get there, right? And so, you know, for the first two, it's basically just going to be like, you know, just throw it back into the stable pools and, you know, just kind of go from there. But once I hit the 750, if it's higher than I thought, then maybe I'll pull some out, throw it into mutual funds and have a little bit of a diversification there, or possibly real estate. Not 100% on what I want to do with that one yet. But if I hit the 1.3 million, I've got like 4 or 5 different things I'm going to be jumping into.
Beautiful. I like it. Will, you got any plans? Do you have your tier system written out?
My tier system for like how much money I'm pulling out at where?
Yeah.
I have a general idea, but I'm sort of kind of like following the Sami plan. You know, shout out to Sami. We shout out Sami all the time in this channel, but shout out Sami. His plan of like watching the sentiment and not like my number plan is cool, right? But like I don't know what's going to happen, and so like getting sentiment reads as things are happening is probably pretty important. Like we got like watching what the Bitcoin price chart is doing. Like it'd be nice if my ideal numbers are hit, right? But like if my like partial numbers are hit and I've pulled my initial investment, and it's like, you know, a little bit higher than that, or it's like some crazy shit happens and like the sentiment changes, then, you know, I'm gonna have to adapt my plan. So I've got a tentative idea, and then after, like, but it's all just like, you know, dependent on what's going on at the time. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
I'm a bit of a crazy person, and I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is a little bit. I have 2 indicators that I have allocated a small portion, and I've told myself these are to see if this proof of concept happens. Actually, excuse me, there's 3 of them. So number 1 is the perfect 4-year cycle. So at exactly 4 years, I will be selling a small chunk. There is also there's also the smooth brain option, which is the pi cycle top indicator on the monthly basis.
Okay.
And then lastly, I have the Jim Cramer top signal. So if he ever says Bitcoin is going anywhere above 500,000, we are selling that portion.
Yep. Those are good ones. I guess, yeah, I suppose I never told you my specifics. My pull profit, or my principal is at 5x. And then that's 20%. So my ideal scenario is 20% principal, 30% the first profit, 30% second profit, and then the final 20% is for, you know, several cycles, or maybe next cycle or something like that. So 20, 30, 30, 20, 5x, and then like whatever the other x's are after that. Like after I pull my principal out, then it's all funny money after that. So we'll see. But that's my sort of, I guess I didn't tell you my plan, but that's my plan. But I like your Jim Cramer method.
The Jim Cramer top signal.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is not financial advice. We're just letting you know what we're doing, and some of us might be a little crazy, and that's fine. Like, for example, I'll throw this out there. Hex Getting Lost in Asia, he has a great tier system. It's called Staking Cuatro Cinco. I respect that. I made a slightly different play with my Hex portfolio. There was a time, I want to say it was either September or October last year. It might have been August even. But I basically took all of the Hex that I had, and I put it in a stake that was ending on the January 1st, 2025. And I was like, all right, this will be good for tax reasons, I suppose, because everything is technically 2025 calendar year. And theoretically, this is the year of the top. And then immediately, like after I did that, a lot of the streams I was watching, people were like, "Oh yeah, we might short cycle this time. We might end up in 2024." And then I'm sitting there just like,
You know what's funny about that is I actually did the same thing, only for my birthday, which is in November of 2024. So close, so close.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So that was, yeah. So I'm going to give some more little alpha of my plan. That's my plan for my regular portfolio. My Hex portfolio is stake it fucking all, and whenever the stakes come unlocked, like I've got this really weird, totally doesn't make any sense even to me ladder system. I just basically get like an itch, and then I scratch it by staking the Hex. And so
that's a pretty healthy itch to scratch right there. I like that.
And so like I'm doing all right with the Hex stakes, and I'm fond of Hex the most. Like the other coins I think are gonna, like, I want to use as my gainers, right? And then Hex is like the store of value sort of thing. So that's my principle on the system. And I might use Matty Allen's time pays me thing and do the drip, and then I might use his time pays me and also do the like hold, you know. So
I will say this: there's a reason that we're talking about Hex, and also mentioning Matty Allen's time pays me is perfect. Which is that, like, this is building the plan. It's putting it a little bit outside of your own hands, so you can't quite fumble it yourself. It's building that plan. Before I toss it over to Sam to get his take on our very degenerate plays, I will say that was with all the liquid Hex I had back then. We have been DCAing consistently, and there are longer stakes now and some liquid Hex. So, like, don't do what I did.
Same thing as me, actually.
Make it on your own volition. But yeah, Sam, what you thinking? Are we crazy over here or what?
Yeah, y'all are pretty crazy. I mean, selling that low. I mean, my plan is basically going to be, you know, when I get a 10x, I'll probably take out 1%, and then when I get 100x, I'll probably take out another 2%, and then when I get that 1000x, I'll probably get up to 10% out, and then the rest of it's just moonbag.
Like, if you just want to start a pissing contest, okay, sure. Hell of a plan there, my man. All right.
Not for real though. I'll probably I'll probably do something similar. Maybe break it up into 520%. Just kind of pull it out. Honestly, my timing is going to be somewhat more tied into where we're at in the market with how my personal business is doing. And like, I've got opportunities to grow my money in different places. And so I'm going to have to basically move things around however I see fit and kind of work with it that way. So I don't really have a plan, but I'm just waiting to see what happens really.
Fair enough. Mrs. Producer, any plans for the top or idea when we're gonna, we will be at the top?
Nope. Nate does that.
Fair enough.
All I know is once we make it, I want a pool. It's really all I care about.
Oh, don't worry, honey. I'll give you a nice pool with a hot tub too. Hey, so amazing viewpoint, right? You're just like, wow, great. You want to have a nice high spot and then a hot tub right there with the infinity edge. Oh yeah.
I like
All
it.
right, well,
You know who can build it for you too, Nate, right?
Yes.
No, who can build it for me?
The shameless self-promotion going on. Wow. Have you built a pool, Sam?
I love how you got yourself perfectly framed for that, Will.
No, I don't make
struggled
pools.
a little bit, but
I'm ready.
Oh, well,
I'm
not
ready.
yet. No, building
But
a
I
pool
probably
sounds...
could know a guy.
Yes.
Okay. Knowing people is good. I highly recommend knowing people.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of knowing people, can I plug a fellow YouTube content creator that we had just
Plug away.
No, get out. No, never.
So I'm going
I'm
to
kidding.
place in the chat a fancy schmancy little link to the Eventbrite Hex conference that will be going on tomorrow at 2:45 to 4 p.m. Central Time. So that would be what would that be in Eastern? That would be 3:45 to 5 o'clock. 1:45
Eastern.
Or for you over there in Mountain Time. East would be later.
Oh, sorry,
in the
you're
day.
correct.
Yeah. So don't worry about the time, right? So the time is, well, do worry about it. 2:45 Central, right? 2:45 Central. So you look up whatever the time is in Chicago, Illinois, and then you look at 2:45 from there, right? So 2:45 p.m. tomorrow, Matty Allen will be doing the Hex conference stream. So shout out to Matty Allen, shout out to his Hex conference, and shout out. Oh, excuse me. This is not the Hex conference like in the sense that like everyone's like talking about all the cool stuff. This is the world record largest number of streamers on one screen all at once, and we need somewhere around like I think 240 people. So everybody take that link. If you click it, it will take you to Eventbrite. You'll just create a quick little profile thing, super easy. You could just use you'll just use like a Google account or whatever. And then it will give you 5 rooms. And in these 5 rooms, you just choose which one you want to be a part of, and then that'll give you a link to a Zoom call and also directions and when it's going on and everything. But the major point is click on that link, follow it, sign up for the 4th annual Hex Conference World Record Most YouTubers Live event. And again, that's being put on by Matty Allen, the famous Hex Conference organizer extraordinaire. So big shout out to Matty Allen and big shout out to this project. And he's actually the one that provided me with this very fancy. I'm waving at my green screen right now, but it's actually it's a JPEG, believe it or not. So he provided me this fancy JPEG, and so in order to thank him for the super fancy JPEG background that he gave me, I'm shilling his link. So haha. So everyone, anyways, go join the Hex conference. Like what's going to happen is basically you'll get a little like 30 seconds to a minute to basically say, hi guys, I'm Will Stevenson. I've been in Hex since, fucking September of 2022, or since Hex Day 1000, or since like the very beginning, like I followed Richard when he was still a Bitcoiner, or like whatever the heck. You basically say like who you are, like what you do. Like I would say, I'm a streamer on YouTube and I build iron TV towers and shit. And yeah, so you say what you do. You say how long you've been in Hex, and that's pretty much it. And then it goes on to the next person. But anyways, we'll go through all like 200 something fucking people on stream, and we'll all be just like little tiny boxes just all over YouTube. And when you do it, just make sure to like, just be a good person and don't be an asshole. There's some people who have had some well, speaking of assholes, some parts on the internet that are explored. So anyways, all that notwithstanding, go follow the link, go sign up because he's doing it all through Eventbrite. I don't think it's going through Telegram. I was talking to him earlier on Twitter, and he said he wants people to do it through Eventbrite because it's easier to get people into specific rooms than to have it all be a mix match jumble bumble fuck. So anyways, that's my shameless plug for Matty Allen. Big thank you, big shout out to Matty Allen. So go
That's
do
about
it.
right.
So what's the security measure on that? Like, how would like pop on for 30 seconds and say something? How are they like regulating?
They're not.
Crazy people don't come on. Oh,
They're
I
not.
think it's
Cool.
trust and
They'll
goodwill
kick people
and
off. They'll have admins.
blind optimism.
But yeah, like there will be admins in the rooms. So you'll basically, what'll happen is there's 5 rooms. So each room will have like a portion where that room is live and everyone can hear everything going on in that room, right? And so then like the live portion will shift. Like they can still see you on screen. Like they'll have the entire like 200 people all in one screen, but only like a portion of the screen's sound will be turned on, and that's to like mitigate, you know, all of the whatever. And so Maddie will like he's got his own way of organizing it and jumping it around. But that's the general gist of how it works. Does that answer your question, Sam? How they moderate it?
Yes.
It's gonna be something to behold, all right.
Oh yeah.
Again, massive thank you to Matty Allen for hosting the Hex conference this year and also inviting us. I know we had a great time watching and joining. If you want a little bit of a recap, go check Wednesday's episode. We talked about our experience on there, as well as some of the ETF news. So with that being said, we're going to start closing it out. And I want to get everyone's final take on the book. Just the little like end of the book. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Would you recommend it? Will, we'll start off with you, brother.
I'm not going to read it again. I've extracted everything that's in the book is value that I have extracted through other means. However, it's like for someone who knows nothing, I would say it's probably a good start. You know, I would definitely not give it to a person and say like fire and forget, read it, and that's all you got to do. It's like hey, read this and then let's talk about the things and like what applies now and what doesn't apply now. So it kind of be like a guided discussion, almost recommendation. I personally am not gonna read it again. Although I will say, there's one thing that I wanted to touch on, and like at the very end of the book, they have a story about a guy and a dog and a condo, right? And so the basic premise of the part is this dude invested in the building of a condo, and then he brought his dog with him, and then the HOA or whatever, like all the homeowners like ganged up on him and they were trying to kick him out, and he was like, fuck you guys, like blah da da, and he eventually made them all capitulate. And then at the very end, like after he capitulated and they rewrote the rules, he's like, I'm out of here because y'all are fucking assholes. But like the point of the story is like, even when you have a lot of money and like other people are still going to want to impose their will on you, and you basically need to surround yourself with other people that are like also winners and stuff, and you don't want to be surrounded by a whole bunch of losers that are non-congruous with like whatever your goals are, right? So I think that was the thing that I took away from the book that was the most important. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with money, but it's a lot to do with lifestyle. Oh yeah, so I think Nate's pointing at us, meaning he's surrounding himself with winners. And also Sam.
I forgot about that story. That was a really good one.
Yeah, that was at the very end of the book. That was like right before the book is over. So if you are going to read the book, focus especially on the end. And that's my 2 cents on the book. Decent read. Won't read it again. Extracted all the value. Good for a beginner, and coach them on it. Those are my book thoughts.
For sure. Where can the people find you?
Oh shit, where can the people find me? So the people can find me at Linktree /Will Stevenson. I'm going to drop that in the chat here right lickety split quick. That has the link to all of my stuff. It's got the link to my socials. It's got the link to the work that I've done. It's got the link to the DGen Roundtable podcast, which you're here now, so you shouldn't need that. But you know, if you want to send it to other people, right, then you can get it there. It's also in the description below. Like you can find all my socials down in the description below, but the Linktree has like everything that is me, like all amalgamated into one quick and easy little spot. that's where you guys can find me. Some things that I'm doing in the near future is driving around Texas, hanging out with Hexicans. If you are a Hexican and you want to meet up with other Hexicans, then the next thing you can do is you can go to bit.ly/hex_meetup_template, which you will notice is on my little personal description thing. You go right there. I will drop that in the chat as well. Boom diata. So bit.ly/hex meetup template. And it's essentially an Excel spreadsheet that is open for editing for anyone on the internet. And you basically, if you're a Hexican and you want to meet with other Hexicans and you don't want to do like an internet conference, or you just want to like hang out with cool crypto people, then you put your information in there and you check what part of the like country you're in and what part of the country other people are in. And then you reach out and message people. So like it's the goal of this tool is to empower people to go and meet other people on their own. Like I like tools. I like things that give me the ability to do stuff. So if you want to go meet other Hexicans and you don't know how to meet other Hexicans because you don't know who the fuck's a Hexican, and you don't want to spend all your time perusing Twitter and saying, "Hey, where do you live? Hey, where do you live? Hey, where do you live?" You just go find other people who have already basically like said, "Hey, I live in this general area." You know, like I was telling Zenith a little bit ago, he's on the list. Like there's some gentlemen over near where he's at, right? So if he wants to go hang out with them, then they've like all of the socials, there's a category for Instagram, there's a category for Twitter, there's a category for messaging on Telegram, there's even a category for if you're an old fuck like me, 30 years old and still on Facebook, like you can message people on Facebook. And so anyways, it's sort of like dox yourself to the level of comfort that you have. But if you want to meet with other Hexicans, go to bit.ly/hex_meetup_template and go meet some Hexicans. That's all I got. Sam, where can the people find you?
And Sam, what do you think of the book?
Find me on the internet and also the book, which is why we're here. I think it was a good piece in the puzzle of what it means in my head to build wealth. I think, I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I got some interpretations and a few more like things to think about. Frankly, I think I got more out of this conversation than I did out of the book itself. And so that's mostly why I'm glad I read it. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend it to people. I also recommend lots of books to people because I think that there's just, you really got to pick and choose from a lot of different things in order to really formulate a good plan and figure out what everything means. So, I think it was a good 6 out of 10, a net positive book in my life. I did not waste time. In terms of finding me on the internet, as you see in my little tag, Bungalows for Bachelors is my company. It is the way to learn about residential construction. If you want to get into learning how to build stuff for yourself, or if you're just tired of your contractors screwing you over, then, start learning how to do it on your own and learn from me. So I'm going to drop my school link in the chat right now. And of course, it said this comment has failed to post. So it didn't show up.
I got you. I posted your Bungalows for Bachelors website, and I'm catching your school one from the beginning of our chat. I'm putting that in the chats right now.
Okay, I'm going to put my YouTube link in the private chat, and Will's going to move it over to the comments.
Yep.
Because
I actually have your link tree open right now. That's how I'm grabbing all your links.
Yeah, I was going to say you should consider a link tree.
Do you want me to post your link tree?
Yeah, that's fine too.
All right. Here's where you can find Sam.
Perfect. While you're doing that, I will say, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. It's awesome to start to expand the book club crew, and I look forward to hopefully having you on some more episodes in the future.
Of course, I do read a lot of books, so
perfect.
If you recommend good ones, then I'll read them.
Will do, but we are also looking for recommendations ourselves. So throw them in the chat or the Telegram, and we're looking for more. What you got there, Will?
This is a book written by Cryptographics, which you guys might recognize that name. He's a Hexican, and he wrote this book, which is Crypto Investing Practical Handbook. And it's pretty it covers the basics of like crypto investing and stuff, and it does all the, I'm not going to give you all the super sexy sauce, but there's like little diagrams in here. And so I bought the physical copy. You can buy it on Amazon. As a matter of fact, I might just go find that link and post it in the chat as well. But yeah, Cryptographics wrote a book, the Practical Handbook of like crypto investing, and it takes you from basically 0 to 1 is my understanding. I was listening to parts of the audiobook earlier. It's on Audible as well. And when you get it on Audible, they send you like a free PDF, which is like the PDF of the book. So it's pretty fucking cool. But that's what I would recommend personally, or Sci-Vive. But that's a bit of a like maybe we could do that chapter by chapter or something. But
We'll add
those
these
are
bad
my
boys to the
personal
list.
recommendations.
Awesome. With that said, Sam, any last words? Good.
Well, I don't think so. Let's see. Oh yeah, if you don't want to join the community on the school server, then you can just check out my YouTube channel, because I would say 80% of the stuff that I do is free and it ends up on YouTube. So let's see, Tuesdays. The Tuesdays is my community call, but Thursdays I'm going to try to be doing every Thursday on that subject to change, a late night learning is what I call it. And so basically I'm gonna do a little live stream, and I'm gonna break down some sort of aspect of construction, usually around engineering, and I'm gonna just explain something nerdy, hopefully in a way that allows people to understand that they didn't know about. So you can check that out on YouTube if you just want to do it for free.
Perfect. I'm an engineer myself, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, kicking it over to Nate, the Ascending Man, Mr. McGettit. What do you got going on, brother?
The Ascending Man. All right. Well, I do have my show, The Ascending Man, on Tuesday. Same time as always. Going to be right around 7 o'clock. That's Central Standard Time. It's going to be all about AI and Q-Star, which has been confirmed and may or may not have made Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT, or OpenAI, my bad, but may not have made him question whether or not they created a machine or a creature. Oh boy. Very interesting. Consciousness, AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is literally just creatures. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting talk. I too have a link tree at Ascending Man. So I'll go ahead and my turn to drop some links here.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, we also have the effing hangout after this. Head right on over there. We got Josh and Will going. I might show up myself, maybe not. Now that I know about what time it's on, so perhaps I will. I might pop in. Other than that, Mrs. McGettit, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, you forgot to give us your final thoughts on the book.
Oh, I was supposed to do a thing, I guess. My
my
overall final thoughts is, like, if you're a beginner, sure, go ahead. Quite frankly, the core, what is going to help you at the beginning of your financial journey, this is a good book for that. I don't think if you've already read through, like me, like 50 freaking how to get rich type books that explain financial literacy, I don't know if this is really going to be the book for you. Quite frankly, it's really boring because it's like, yeah, I've heard it a million times. Same thing. And not only that, but it's like old, but it's obviously got the good cores to it. And it's a lot of fun to actually go through how they did the math and the stats and all that. That is a lot of fun, especially with blue collar workers versus the white collar. That was a lot of fun too. I'm like, oh, interesting that they're actually going with the blue collar millionaires this time. And then it also kind of explained to me a little bit more about a lot of the people that I go and service their homes, do pest control for. There's a lot of people I'm looking at like, this is interesting. And you've got to have a lot of money. And then other people I'm looking at like, there's no way you guys must be in so much debt right now. And I can tell that just by talking with people and going through things. And yeah, it's an interesting perspective. That's for sure.
I got some real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt Mrs. Baguette, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Liquid Loans. They just hit 1 trillion pulse locked up. So
hey, I was watching that.
Loans. Yeah,
awesome.
I think it happened while we were live. I'm not positive, but good job, Liquid Loans. And that's all I had to say about that. Good shit.
I think that's okay, now you were a jerk. I was gonna say, I think that was a well-deserved interruption. Congrats to them. Good job. We love Walrus here. Had him on a couple times now, so very excited for them. For me, when it comes to socials, I don't really have anything. I'm not doing anything outside of what I do with you guys here. That might change. Jay is trying to get me to do Pokemon podcast. I'm not sure how that would go, but interesting idea. He says nobody's doing it, so we'll see. We'll see on that one. Not positive yet. But other than that, my impressions in the book, I do agree that it got kind of tedious. There was a lot of repeating the same things over and over without really any super fun stories attached, because we've read a lot of books like this, and like The Richest Man in Babylon, the reason I really like that one is because it had a lot of stories. I could follow along. It kept my interest. It really got into a bunch of those. There weren't too many in here that really stood out to me as being like invigorating. They were more like boring. It's like, oh, this person sat on their wealth their whole life and then died and gave it to their kids. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's not fun. But I did really love the dog story that Will brought up. The funny part about that one is the person who had that dog actually was one of the, like, I think from what I understood, was one of the like founders of the building. And it was in the original contract that they were going to have that dog. That was never a question. But then as soon as everybody moved in, they like betrayed him and they're like, we don't want your dog here. And they were super hostile about it. And they ended up selling the condo for like way less than what it was worth. They were like, fuck y'all. We're just going to leave. We don't even care about the money. This is our dog. You don't like our dog. You're making our dog, live in a hostile environment. We're leaving. So that one was good. I really like that story. But unfortunately, it was like literally the last one in the book. So you had to wait until all the way to the end to get to that one. But other than that, kind of what we've already talked about. There's a lot of core values in here that are really good. But I'm going to agree with Nate on this one. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you've read Richest Man in Babylon, you can probably skip this one. It goes over a lot of the same stuff. There's not too much in here that I didn't already kind of see coming. So it really depends on where you've already been. If you haven't really read anything, go for it. And if you're bored, it's on Audible. It's not like you have to actually physically read it. So you can toss it on in the background when you're doing other stuff too, if you want to do that. Definitely think it would be worth the time if you do have extra time and you haven't really explored, or even if you have explored and you just want to give it a shot,
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that. And I will also say thank you very much for the fabulous new template. It might be a subtle change to some folks, but I think the new template looks fantastic. Now, all the comments don't cover up our faces, and we have dead space in the top. This is perfect, and we even have a QR code in there. So thank you very much, Mrs. Producer. You do good work. And as far as me just throwing a PowerPoint in here in the last minute, like, this worked out very well. So thanks again for making that happen.
Yeah, good job for you too, bro.
I appreciate it. Do you guys see the little book? I added a book for us. We got our own special little thing now.
Down there.
That's right. This is the book club template right now. This is ours.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm not closing out the show just yet. I got to give my final thoughts on the book, but I do want to pull up a chat from someone who's been on fire tonight, and that's Willie B. Long, Mr. 33. He said, we were talking about moon math, and he put this gem in here. He said, we got to watch the euphoria at the tops. It blinded him with Hex when it was at 12 cents, and he tripped on that. Absolutely. That's why we talked about some of the stuff we did today, and why I asked if there's any psychological pitfalls that might happen around the top, or if there's sudden wealth syndrome. Being aware of the problem is always the first step into solving a problem, so great conversation with all these great people, and thank you to everybody that showed up tonight. This has been fantastic. I know this is a bit of at some points it got a little pedantic or numbers heavy because I threw a massive chart up there and killed a few people probably with that, but thank you so much for spending time with us. I would say that Will, I think all you guys have very good takes on the book, which is that Will said this is a good guided talking piece, 100%. Sam said it's a piece in the puzzle. I would agree. This is a piece of the puzzle. Is it replaceable with some others? Yeah, probably. So like Nate and Mrs. McGetta were saying, if you've read a lot of other stuff, this is not going to be new information. I am going to say that I think this is still part of the foundational library for personal finance. And if anything, it's a good look into the past when it comes to what the past generation thought about money, how they accomplished it with the tools that they had. And then it's definitely a book you have to take with a grain of salt. Understand what your goals are and understand the ways to get there and how the times have changed. There's absolutely good things to be said in here. If you are a person that wants to build an empire, I'm a little bit like that myself. I'm not necessarily going to spend a lot of the money myself, but I would like to leave it to someone or a good cause. And that's my goal. So I think this book definitely fills that niche. 6 out of 10 feels about right as far as the interest goes, but I'll say this much. I read this one with my own eyeballs in one afternoon, so it's not that bad of a read. If I can do it, you can do it, because we are all smart people here, and I believe in you guys. With that being said, I am Zenith. You can find me on all the socials at Hexaco Space Force. If you're interested in a little bit more moon math, on my personal YouTube channel, I did release a video talking about that, about what happens when your crypto makes too much money. So a little bit of tax news, possible tax breaks, and then also what the portfolio numbers might even look like with something pretty average. With that being said, this Sunday, we do have a special show for everybody. We are doing our Q1 of 2024 thesis. The gang is all going to be there, and we're going to be talking about what we expect to see for the next few months, and we're going to try to incorporate all the stuff we've already seen into our final draft. And along with that, we're even putting out a document to show you so that you can keep it along the way and not have to reference a 2-hour stream. So that is what we're up to. And then after that, on Wednesday, we have the TA Mega Stream. That's going to be a blast. We have tons of folks showing up. I think we have Axis Alive, Tobio and Hexobi, Boogie, and our very own Agent J breaking down TA going forward. So don't miss that, and don't miss all the future stuff going on. With that being said, thank you to the panel. Thank you to the audience. Thank you, Sam, for joining us. And we will catch you guys next time.